Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight the roads stretch on forever and the lights flicker like dying eyes. We're taking you off the beaten path into 20 real encounters at Texas rest stops where weary travelers heard sobbing from locked stalls. Vending machines offered memories instead of snacks, and mirrors revealed more than reflections. These aren't ghost stories but true events shared by people who thought they were alone until something proved them very wrong. Here's what most viewers miss. They watch and leave without subscribing, and those are the ones who never hear. What comes next? Don't be one of them. Hit subscribe now, because what lurks at these rest stops won't stay hidden for long. It follows you home, learns your routines, and even now it's waiting. Tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Tonight the horror begins. It was late, closer to 3 a.m. than anything decent, when Russell pulled his truck into the dimly lit rest stop outside Amarillo. The highway had stretched endlessly for hours, flat and featureless, with the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the last man on earth. The radio had given up the ghost 2 counties back, playing nothing but static no matter how much he fiddled with the dial. So when he spotted the glow of the overhead lights, flickering against the emptiness like an oasis, he didn't hesitate. His bladder had been screaming since Lubbock. It was supposed to be a quick piss, maybe splash some water on his face, and back on the road, nothing more. But the second he stepped out of the cab and the truck door clicked shut behind him, the air felt wrong. Not cold, not warm, just still. The kind of stillness you get in old barns, or deep in the woods when all the birds have stopped singing. The building stood squat and concrete, surrounded by cracked pavement and overgrown weeds. The only other car there, an old Crown Vic with Colorado plates, sat empty. The interior was fogged up and too dark to see into. He noticed it, noted it, and moved on. He didn't believe in ghosts, didn't believe in much besides caffeine and freight schedules. But that stillness, he felt it in the gut like a slow turn of a wrench. Inside. The restroom smelled like bleach and something older underneath, something sweet and rotten that bleach could only pretend to cover. One of the fluorescent lights was buzzing and the other was stuttering like it couldn't quite remember how to stay on. He made for the last urinal, zipped up, and sighed. But then he heard it soft at first, barely noticeable over the hum of the lights, and the gentle whine of the night wind creeping through a cracked window. Crying. A woman. Faint, but unmistakable. High-pitched and wet, like someone trying not to be heard, but failing. Russell stiffened. He zipped up and turned slowly, eyes scanning the row of stalls. All doors shut tight except one, the farthest on the left, closest to the wall, marked with peeling red paint. Stall 4. The crying continued. And now that he was really listening, he noticed something else. It wasn't just sobbing. It was murmuring. Words, maybe. Something low and repetitive, like a prayer or a name. Hello? He called out. The crying stopped instantly. He waited, heart tapping a little faster in his chest. You okay in there? He asked. No answer. He took a step forward, then another. The rubber soles of his boots squeaked on the tile. When he reached the stall, he hesitated, hand hovering over the door. It was closed but not latched. The small silver bolt inside didn't glint with that horizontal lock of privacy. It was just resting there. He pushed it open. The stall was empty. No woman, no bag, no feet under the door. Nothing but cracked tile and a toilet that hadn't flushed properly in a decade. The crying didn't echo anymore. In fact, it was so quiet, he could hear his own heartbeat. But what really got him, what chilled him from his neck to the soles of his feet, was the floor. It was bone dry. And yet, his ears weren't lying. He had heard it, loud, sad, real. He backed out slowly, kept his eyes on that stall the whole time. Then he turned and left the building, walking faster than he meant to, like someone might reach out from the walls and grab the back of his coat. Outside, the stillness felt worse now. The sky above was too clear. Stars glittered like they were. Watching him, the wind had died altogether. Even the bugs had stopped their nightly chorus. He got back in the truck and locked the doors. It wasn't until he was halfway to the highway again that he looked in the rearview mirror and saw her. Just for a second, a woman in a blue dress, hair wet like she'd just climbed out of a lake, standing by the rest stop door. Mouth open, eyes empty, crying without sound. Then she was gone. Russell didn't sleep that night. He just drove and drove. Didn't stop till dawn, and even then, only in a crowded gas station with a dozen people around. The next night, it happened again. Different rest stop. Same setup, empty building. Stall 4. This time he didn't go in. Just heard her crying when he walked past the women's room. He paused, listened for a moment, and kept walking. Fast. He started looking up the places after that. Searching for stories, accidents, murders, missing persons. And it didn't take long before the names started popping up. Caitlin Reeves, 26, vanished in 1998 on her way to visit family in Dallas. Last seen in Amarillo at a rest stop off the 287. Only thing they ever found was her purse. In stall 4, floor bone dry. No signs of struggle. No fingerprints. No exit. That rest stop was closed for renovation a few years later. Never reopened. The building is still there. Windows boarded. Parking lot filled with weeds and old soda bottles. But truckers say they still hear it late at night. Engine off, windows cracked. The soft sound of a woman crying behind the concrete walls. Stall 4. Always stall 4. And if you're stupid enough to open the door, some say she follows you. Not right away. Not loud, but she'll keep showing up. Quiet, sad, just at the edge of your vision by the gas pumps. In the rearview mirror. Sitting on the toilet seat in some rundown place when you swear you're alone. And every time, she's wetter, pale, her sobs louder, her mouth wider. Until one day, you hear her from inside your own home, and the next time someone checks that house, the floor will be bone dry, but you'll be gone. He pulled off the highway just past dusk, the horizon still painted in that burnt orange Texas glow that makes you forget how lonely the road can get. Nate had been driving west for almost 9 hours straight, trying to make it from Tyler to Albuquerque in one push. He wasn't young anymore, late 30s, maybe 40 depending on who you asked, but he wasn't the type to complain about sore knees or a stiff back. Still, when the flutter of his eyelids lingered too long on the empty 2-lane, he knew it was time to pull over. There was a rest stop a few miles out of Lubbock that his GPS pointed out nothing special, just a cracked concrete lot with an old metal awning, a few picnic tables, and the familiar stink of heat baked into every surface, but it would do. The sign creaked as he turned in. A faded blue placard read, "Public Rest Area, established 1956. The kind of place that time forgot. 1 bathroom building, no vending machines, and a big oak tree off to the side that looked half dead. There was only one other car parked, a rust-colored Buick with no plates and windows so dark he couldn't see inside. He figured someone else just needed a break. Same as him. He parked near the edge of the lot, under the one streetlight still sputtering against the dying sunlight, leaned the seat back, and set the timer on his phone for 30 minutes. Just enough to recharge, he told himself. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel for a second before he let out a long breath, closed his eyes, and drifted. When he woke up, everything felt off, His mouth was dry like cotton, and his muscles ached in a way they hadn't before. Not sore from driving sore like he'd been laid up in bed for weeks. The air inside the truck felt heavy, thick. He blinked at the windshield, trying to focus, but something was different. He sat up and noticed right away that the light above was out, the whole rest stop swallowed in an eerie dusk even though the sun should have been long down by now. He grabbed his phone from the passenger seat. The screen lit up, but instead of the expected 9:30 p.m., the lock screen read, June 11th, 2036 to 6:12 p.m. Nate froze. The date blinked at him like a joke. He tapped the screen, locked it, unlocked it again. Same. The battery was still 83%, but the carrier read nitrogen monoxide service. He stared at it, heart beginning to pound in his chest. It had to be a glitch. His phone must have reset somehow. That happened, didn't it? He reached for the rearview mirror and stopped. His hand looked wrong. Veined, liver-spotted, fingers thinner than they should have been. He lifted it slowly, trembling now, and touched his face. Stubble had grown while he slept, but it wasn't. The short black stubble he was used to, it was wiry, gray. His beard, what little had come in, looked like steel wool dot. He fumbled for the mirror. Staring back at him was a man he didn't recognize. His hair had thinned, lines creased his forehead, his cheeks had hollowed out slightly, and his eyes, they looked tired. Haunted. He shot out of the truck, nearly stumbling as his legs struggled to support him. The rest stop was quiet. No cars. The Buick was gone. Nate staggered to the restroom building. He slapped the door open, stepped inside. Flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The mirrors were cracked, one completely shattered, but the one still intact confirmed it. He looked 20 years older. At least. He turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on his face. The water came out brown at first, then clear. He looked down at his hands gripping the sink and saw something scratched into the porcelain. Faint, but there. Don't sleep. Not here. His breath caught. He backed out of the bathroom and looked around. The trees beyond the rest stop were black silhouettes now. No crickets. No wind. No highway noise. Just stillness. He ran back to the truck, but when he pulled on the handle, it didn't budge. Locked. And his keys were still inside. He pressed his face to the window. Something was on the dashboard. A folded piece of paper that hadn't been there before. He squinted. It had his name written on it. He pounded on the window, trying to break it, but the glass wouldn't budge. He tried a rock from the ground, nothing, not even a crack. He backed away slowly, phone still clutched in his hand. He brought it up again. Tried unlocking it, going into settings, checking the date. Everything said the same. 2036. He scrolled through his gallery, no photos after today. His contacts list was empty. His call history wiped. Even his notes folder had one thing in. Time doesn't move here. It jumps. He started walking. He didn't know where he was going, but he couldn't stay. The longer he stood near that truck, the heavier the air felt, like it was pulling him back in. Like sleep might take him again. And who knows where or when he'd wake up next. He followed the highway, hoping to find a gas station, a mile marker, anything. But there was nothing. No headlights, no hum of cars, no distant towns. Just a road that stretched into the dark, empty plain of Texas. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. He couldn't tell anymore. The stars above looked unfamiliar, like the constellations had shifted. When he looked back, the rest stop was gone. Just flat. Open land. He kept walking. Eventually, he saw lights. Not headlights, streetlights. A small gas station blinked into view, sitting crooked at the corner of a dusty service road. He ran toward it. The door chimed when he entered. The man behind the counter looked up, startled. Jesus, the clerk said. You okay, man? I need help, Nate said, breathless. I think something's wrong with me. The date, it's not right. The clerk blinked. It's June 11th, 2036. You lose your memory or something? Nate shook his head. I stopped at a rest area, just outside Lubbock. I slept for half an hour. That's it. And then this. He gestured to his face. His hands. The clerk stared. For a long moment, then slowly nodded. Was it the old rest stop off 84? With the metal roof and the oak tree? Nate nodded. Double quotes, yeah, the man said. That place ain't been there for years. Got shut down in 22. Some weird stuff happened. People went missing. Others came out. Different. A few aged overnight. One guy came out thinking it was 1950. Another lady walked in with her dog. Came back without it screaming it had turned to ash. The air grew colder. They bulldozed it 2 years back, the clerk went on, but folks still see it sometimes. Especially tired drivers. It shows up like a mirage. You go in, and time don't play by the rules anymore. Nate leaned against the counter, his knees giving out. What do I do? The clerk didn't answer right away. He reached under the counter, pulled out a sheet of paper, and slid it across. On it was a list of names, dozens. Next to each name, a year. Some were from the past. Others, from the future. Next to Nathaniel Brooks was written 2036. Nate stared. You're not the first, the clerk said, but you might be the last. They say once it finishes its list, it moves on. Nate looked out the window. In the far distance, where the road met the horizon, he could see the flicker of a single yellow streetlight swaying slightly in the breeze, and beneath it, the outline of a rust-colored Buick with no plates, just waiting. It sat just outside the women's restroom at a forgotten rest stop off Highway 281, not far from Lampasas, the kind of place that felt like it was being slowly erased by time and dust. The siding of the building was weather-beaten, the roof sagged just slightly at the edges, and the vending machines lined up against the red brick wall looked like they hadn't been serviced since the late 90s. There were 2 Coke machines, both permanently flashing out of order, a faded Pepsi dispenser with buttons so worn the labels were nearly unreadable, and then there was the one no one remembered ever seeing before. It wasn't rusted, not exactly. The metal was dark, matte black, with a coin slot that looked newly polished and a faint hum, like a refrigerator running in the background of a quiet kitchen at night. What made it odd wasn't just that it worked when the others didn't, it was what it offered. Ellie Rourke saw it the first time she pulled in on her way back from San Antonio. Late afternoon sun angling low through the trees and throwing long, distorted shadows across the gravel lot. She was only stopping to pee and maybe grab a Dr. Pepper if the machine felt generous. She walked right past the others, her boots crunching grit, but something about the black vending machine caught her eye. It didn't have a brand, just the word selections at the top in bold white type. The kind of generic label that screamed low-budget grocery chain or knockoff toys in a gas station claw machine. Curious. She bent to look through the fogged plexiglass panel. That's when she noticed the snacks. Twinkies with a label design she hadn't seen since high school. Hostess cupcakes with foil wrapping. An old glass bottle of clearly Canadian water she used to drink at her grandmother's house in 1992. And, tucked into one corner, a narrow slot with a red button that didn't have a label at all, just a blinking green LED beside it. Ellie tilted her head. That slot held something that didn't belong. Not a snack, not a soda, not even a toy. It was a manila envelope, slightly bent at the corner, unmarked. She wasn't sure why she pressed the button. It made a sound, mechanical and wet at the same time. Like gears grinding underwater, the envelope dropped with a soft thud. She hesitated. The rest stop was quiet. The cicadas had gone still. She crouched, opened the flap, and saw her own handwriting. It was a copy of the letter she'd written in college. The one she'd never sent. The one she burned in her sink while crying so hard she thought she'd throw up. A letter to her best friend, Erin, apologizing for what she'd said that night at the river, for walking away, for not calling the ambulance when Erin passed out, thinking she'd just sleep it off. Erin died in her sleep 3 hours later. A mix of pills and vodka. Everyone had said it was a tragic accident, but Ellie knew better. Her knees buckled. She sat down hard on the pavement, the envelope clutched in both hands like it was trying to bite her. She didn't remember ever saving a copy. And yet here it was, creases and all, smudged with mascara tears. She looked up at the machine, heart thudding, breathing shallow and fast. The other items behind the glass seemed different. Now, not old snacks, but something deeper. Personal. In row B, there was a VHS tape with a yellowed sticker labeled Homecoming 1998. She hadn't thought of that night in years. The night her father, drunk, angry, showed up in the parking lot of the dance and dragged her home by the hair. There had never been a tape, not one she knew of. But it was there, unmistakable. In row D, a cassette labeled Unmarked Calls. Her stomach twisted. She'd gotten those calls for months after. Erin died. Breathing. Static. Sometimes someone crying softly. The police had told her it was pranksters. She stopped answering. The green light on the red button blinked again, like it was waiting. She stood, arms trembling, and backed away. She drove off without using the bathroom. For days after, she couldn't get the machine out of her head. She searched online. Nothing. No listings. No complaints. No Yelp reviews of that rest stop even existing anymore. She told herself she imagined it, her grief resurfacing. But 3 weeks later, after a sleepless night filled with dreams of Erin wet hair, lips blue, eyes staring, Ellie drove back. The machine was still there, and someone else was standing. In front of it, a man in a denim jacket, back turned. He was holding something, reading. His shoulders slumped slowly as if someone had removed all the bones from his spine. He didn't notice her. The envelope in his hand trembled. Then he turned around and looked at her, eyes glassy, pale. She recognized him instantly. Mr. Hanley. He'd been her history teacher in sophomore year. Everyone liked him, soft-spoken. He'd gone missing 4 years ago. His face had been on milk cartons, billboards. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came, just a faint wheeze. He pointed at the machine, then at himself, and shook his head. His lips formed a word. She couldn't read it. Then he stepped backwards. 1, 2 steps, and vanished. Not walked away. Not ducked into the trees. Gone. The envelope fluttered to the ground. She ran. Didn't stop until she reached her car, nearly. Dislocating her shoulder, yanking the door open. For months she didn't talk about it. Couldn't, but it was always in her head. She started dreaming about it every night. Always the same. She's a little girl walking down a supermarket aisle, but the shelves are vending machines, all humming, all full of things she thought she forgot, old toys, lost diaries, Polaroids of things no one should have seen. And at the end of the aisle, always the same machine, black, silent, waiting. She finally told her brother. He didn't laugh. He listened. Said it sounded like some kind of psychological trick, a prank, a trauma response. Maybe she was hallucinating. Maybe. He went with her. It was gone. The whole rest stopped, like it'd never been there. Just a wide patch of gravel and cracked concrete, overgrown with weeds. No building. No trees. No machine. But there was a coin on the ground. clean, polished, sitting upright on its edge. Like it had been placed there. She picked it up. It was old. A Sacagawea dollar from 2000. But the date had been scratched out. In its place, neatly etched in fine trembling lines. Try again. Ellie still dreams of it. Some nights, she hears the clunk of a falling envelope before she opens her eyes. Other nights, she wakes up with her pillow soaked in tears she doesn't remember crying. And every now and then, she finds something. Slipped under her door, old photos, recordings, notes she wrote but never saved. Memories she tried to forget. And one day soon, she knows she see the machine again. Maybe it'll be in a hotel lobby, or behind a gas station in Odessa, or at a rest stop that wasn't there yesterday. It'll be waiting, because it always knows. It knows what you lost. It knows what you regret, and it always offers you exactly what you never bought, but wish you hadn't thrown away. The road shimmered under the late afternoon sun, the heat rising in visible waves off the asphalt. I'd been driving for 6 hours straight, my AC wheezing like a dying lung, barely keeping the sweat off my forehead. I was hauling ass down I-10 westbound, somewhere between Junction and Arizona, a stretch of Texas so empty it made you feel like you'd slipped out of time. Nothing but low, scrubby hills, mesquite trees, and the occasional rusting barbed wire fence. No radio signal, no towns, and not a single goddamn gas station for miles. I wasn't supposed to be there. I'd taken a detour after hearing there was an accident on 87. Some semi flipped and blocked both lanes. So I rerouted south, thinking I'd save time. Maybe that was the first mistake. The second was stopping for her. I saw the child just passed. Mile marker 382, standing in the tall yellow grass that lined the ditch. She was maybe 8, maybe younger, pale blue dress, knees smudged with dirt, dark hair tangled and plastered to her forehead. At first I thought she was a scarecrow, the way she was so still. But then she raised one hand slowly and waved, a jerky motion like her arm was too heavy for her body. I pulled over without thinking. You don't leave a kid out here, not in this heat, not in the middle of nothing. I rolled down the window. Hey, are you okay? Where's your mom? She didn't answer. Just took a few steps forward through the grass, her little black shoes crunching on gravel. Her eyes were wide, too wide for her face. And her smile, God, I swear to you, started normal. Then it stretched and stretched until it looked like someone had sliced the corners of her mouth open with a razor. Her teeth were too white, too even, like they weren't real. Where's your mom? I asked again, my voice quieter now. Her lips barely moved when she spoke. She's coming. The way she said it made my stomach tighten. Her voice was flat, like it had no breath behind it, just words dropped into the air. I glanced around. Nothing. Not a single car. Not a building, not a billboard. Just her and that endless stretch of highway. You want to come sit in the car? I've got water. She looked over her shoulder, slowly, like she was listening to something. Then she turned back and took another step. That's when I noticed her shadow. It didn't move right. It didn't match the position of the sun. It lagged behind her steps by just a second, and when she turned her head, the shadow stayed still. For a moment longer before jerking to catch up, I blinked, rubbed my eyes. It was still wrong. I leaned over and opened the passenger door. Come on, we'll find help. She climbed in without a word. She didn't sit like a normal kid. She didn't bounce or fidget. She folded her hands neatly in her lap and stared out the windshield, smiling that too wide smile. What's your name? I asked. Emily. Okay, Emily, I'm Dan. Silence. Then, softly. Are you going to take me to her? I didn't know how to answer. To your mom? She nodded, eyes still fixed ahead. I started driving, slow at first, keeping an eye. On her, she didn't move, not an inch. I tried the radio again, nothing but static. I looked down at my phone, no service. The GPS was spinning, unable to find signal. The temperature on the dashboard display read 113 degrees, which didn't seem right. I checked my wristwatch. It had stopped. The second hand was twitching, stuck between ticks. That's when I noticed we were still passing the same patch of road. Same bent mesquite tree. Same shredded tire in the ditch. It looped over and over like the world was on repeat. "You're lost," Emily said, so quietly I almost didn't catch it. I looked at her. "What did you say? You don't know where you are?" She was right. I'd been driving for 20 minutes and hadn't seen another mile marker. The sun hadn't moved. Everything looked the same. I pulled over again. My hands were shaking now. "Where's your mom, Emily? Tell me." She turned to face me, finally. Her eyes weren't right. They were too dark, like the black of them had bled into the whites. Her voice was smaller now, but sharper. "She's close. She doesn't like when people take me away." "I didn't take you. You stopped." My mouth went dry. I tried to start the engine again, but it wouldn't turn. Just clicked. I hit the wheel. Come on," Emily giggled. It was a sound that didn't belong in that car. Too old, too hollow. I reached for the door handle, but it wouldn't open. None of them would. The windows fogged over instantly, as if the heat outside had been replaced by something cold and wet. I could barely see the road anymore. And then, through the condensation on the windshield, I saw her, a woman, standing in the middle of the Vimahas road about 30 feet ahead. She was barefoot, wearing a long nightgown soaked at the hem. Her hair hung in tangled ropes across her face, and her hands, Jesus, they dragged along the pavement, too long, too thin. Her jaw hung slack. Her eyes were dead. "Is that her?" I whispered. Emily's grin split wide again. "Yes." The woman began walking toward the car. She didn't move like someone walking. She slid. One moment she was 30 feet away, the next she was 10, then 5. I reached for my keys again, trying to start the car, whispering prayers I hadn't said since I was a kid. The engine coughed, then roared to life. The woman was outside my door now. Her hand pressed against the glass, skin gray and bloated. Her nails were yellow, cracked. Her mouth opened, and she whispered something I couldn't hear. Emily whispered it for her. "Give her back. I didn't take you." I shouted. I was trying to help. The car began to shake. The windows screamed as if they were under pressure. Emily's body twitched, jerked, her head rolling like her neck was made of rubber. Her eyes rolled back. The smile never left. The woman's hand pressed harder, glass starting to spiderweb. I floored the gas. The car rocketed forward. Through her, there was a sound like breaking bones and wind screaming in reverse. Then nothing. The sun was gone. Just like that, it was night. The car was parked on the shoulder of the highway, hazard lights blinking. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. Full signal. 9:12 p.m. Emily was gone. Passenger door closed. No sign. She'd ever been there. But in the grass, where she'd been standing when I first saw her, something shimmered under the moonlight. I got out, my legs weak, heart thumping against my ribs like it wanted out. It was a photograph. Old, creased, black and white. A little girl standing beside a car from the 1950s, smiling wide. Her eyes were dark. Her mother, beside her, looked. Scared dot on the back, written in faded blue ink. Last picture before the wreck. Mile 382. Emily, 1957. I don't drive that route anymore. I don't stop for anything I see in the grass. If you ever do, just remember that sometimes a smile isn't a smile. And not every child on the side of the road wants to be saved. Some just want to bring their mother back, even if it means you take their place. The old rest stop off Highway 183, just south of Lampasas, hadn't seen a renovation since the late 70s. The vending machines still sold gum for a quarter if you hit them just right, and the soap in the bathroom dispensers came out smelling like the inside of a nursing home. But it was quiet, and it was shaded by big pecan trees that creaked when the wind came through. Truckers and long-haul drivers still used it because the lot was wide and empty enough for an easy U-turn, and because it sat far enough from the city that nobody bothered you well, nobody alive anyway. Randy Pearson didn't believe in ghosts. He barely believed in himself most days, scraping by hauling tools and havoc parts across Texas in his rattling old Freightliner. He was the kind of guy who kept a stained trucker cap jammed over thinning hair, smoked when he was nervous, which was always, and still used a flip phone. That Thursday night, it was around 11:40 when he pulled into the rest stop, engine hot, eyes heavier than he'd admit. The fluorescent lights on the bathroom building flickered like they were fighting off sleep. 2. Randy just needed a piss, maybe splash some water on his face, and he'd be back on the road. There were 3 urinals inside, one of them clogged, with something dark he didn't want to identify, and 2 stalls with scratched-up doors that never really closed right. The place smelled like ammonia, sweat, and something older, something like mildew soaked into concrete. But the mirror over the cracked sink was what made him pause. It was huge. Bigger than any rest stop mirror he'd seen. Old? 2. Framed in rusted silver with speckled edges like it had caught fire and then tried to pretend it hadn't. Someone had scratched something faint across the top edge in what looked like a key. See who you really are. Randy muttered Jesus under his breath and leaned forward to wash his face. He didn't notice anything strange at first. Just the usual reflection, bloodshot eyes, oil-slicked skin, tired lines like someone had pressed fingers into his cheeks too hard. But as he looked closer, hands dripping cold water back into the chipped porcelain, he realized the mirror wasn't quite showing what it should. His eyes were open in the reflection, but they weren't blinking. They were staring past him, glassy and blank. He wiped at the mirror with the edge of his shirt, thinking maybe the smudge was playing tricks. But the image didn't change. And now God, he didn't want to believe it, but now there was something else. His skin in the reflection had taken on a pale, bluish tint, the kind you only see at funeral homes. His lips were slightly parted, slack, and a thin trail of blood ran from the left nostril. His shirt, he looked down at the real one, was just damp from sweat, but in the mirror it was torn, smeared with something thick and red across the chest. He backed up fast, hard hammering like a fist on steel. The reflection stayed frozen like a crime scene photo. Then just for a second it moved. Not him, not his real body. The reflection tilted its head just slightly, like it was curious. Watching him, waiting. Randy stumbled out of the bathroom. Didn't even zip up. He stood under the buzzing light outside, hands shaking. He told himself it was just the exhaustion, the long hours, maybe too many of those chalky energy pills from the Love's gas station back in Burnett. He paced for a while, muttering to himself, until he felt ridiculous. He needed sleep. That was all. But when he turned to look at the bathroom one more time, maybe to prove to himself it wasn't haunted, wasn't wrong, he saw something that made the blood in his legs go cold. The light in the bathroom was still on, casting a hazy glow through the half-open door. And in the mirror, just barely visible from that distance, was the figure again, him. But the reflection wasn't standing where he was anymore. It was lying, flat, still and broken, on the dirty floor. He got in his truck and left. By the time Randy made it to Llano, he wasn't sure what was real. Every shadow at a stoplight twitched like it had a life of its own. He kept checking his mirrors, half expecting to see that pale dead version of himself staring back. He avoided rest stops for weeks after that, used gas stations instead, or just peed behind his truck in the dark. But the fear, that didn't go away. He tried telling a couple of the other drivers he knew, just lightly over coffee at some diner outside Laredo. Most of them laughed or changed the subject, but one, an old guy named Lou with a belly like a barrel and eyes that had seen too much, went quiet. He asked Randy if it was the place with the vending machines that still sold Zagnuts. When Randy nodded, Lou just rubbed his temples and said, "Don't go back." Not ever. Turns out Lou had seen it too, years back. Different face, same trick. The mirror had shown him with his throat cut open like someone had done it slow and eyes bulging, like a fish pulled from deep water. He left and never returned, but the thing followed him for a while. In dreams, in reflections. It whispered to him sometimes through bathroom fans. Said it was waiting. Randy started noticing it too. Not always in the bathroom, not even in the bathroom. Truck mirrors. But at night, when the microwave door clicked shut and the glass caught just the right light, or the TV black screen before it flickered on, there it was again. That version of himself that wasn't alive, that version with twisted limbs and busted ribs, lying in that same dirty bathroom floor. Sometimes it blinked. Sometimes it smiled. But it never disappeared completely. 2 months after that first night, Randy couldn't sleep. He kept hearing the hum of the rest stop lights in his ears, like a bug you can't swat away. So one night, out of something like madness or something like surrender, he drove back. Left at dusk, took the familiar highway until the shape of those pecan trees rose up against the lavender sky. The rest stop was empty. Just the soft hum of cicadas and the gentle sigh of a hot breeze. The bathroom door creaked open like it had been expecting him. Randy stepped inside. Everything was just as he'd left it. The same smell, the same busted stall, the same flickering light. And the mirror, waiting. He stared into it. Watched as the reflection showed not the man he was, but the man he would be. Skin split open. Down the middle, eyes missing like they'd been scooped out, limbs turned in directions no body should bend, and blood. So much blood. Pooling around his boots, dripping from his hands. And then he felt it. Not fear. Not even pain. Familiarity. Like the image wasn't showing him the future, but something that had already happened, something he had forgotten until now. Like the mirror didn't just reflect death, it remembered it. They found Randy 3 days later. The county called it an accident. A mugging gone wrong, maybe. But his truck was untouched and nothing had been stolen. He was lying just inside the bathroom, eyes open, face pale, body twisted in the exact position it had been in that mirror. The coroner said he died of massive internal trauma. Couldn't explain how. No defensive wounds. No signs of a struggle. Covered the mirror after that. Bolted a steel sheet over it. But some say if you go there late enough, in the black quiet just before morning, you can still see something moving behind the steel. And if the light hits it just right, just for a second, it still shows your face, only dead, and smiling. The lot was behind an old roadside diner off US Highway 67, a few miles south of San Angelo, where the mesquite trees grew wild and the dirt always smelled dry, no matter how much it rained. The diner had changed names over the years. Darla's, then Sally's, then just the Junction, but the cracked sign and flickering neon coffee cup stayed the same, glowing like a dying star above the faded parking lines. It was the kind of place where truckers pulled in during the graveyard shift to nurse burnt coffee and a slice of stale pie, where tired locals came for the silence more than the food. Nothing much happened there until the truck showed up. It was a 1980s Ford F-150. Long bed, rust around the fenders, paint dull like dried blood. It arrived one night in late September, just after the air had turned crisp, as if someone had flipped a switch from summer to fall. It was already parked when Jimmy McCreary opened the diner at 5 a.m. He figured it belonged to a hunter or maybe someone who'd broken down and hoofed it into town. But when he unlocked the front door, he glanced back at the lot and paused. The engine was running. Not roaring, not sputtering, but idling low and steady. The kind of sound you could mistake for your own heartbeat if you were tired enough. He waited for someone to get out. No one did. He walked out toward it, coffee pot still in hand like some shield of normalcy. The windows were fogged from the inside, too dark to see through, and the faint throb of exhaust curled from the tailpipe into the cold air. Jimmy knocked on the driver's side window. Nothing. He circled around and tried the handle. Locked. Then he saw the seat, the driver's. Seat was soaked, black and glistening in the morning light like someone had spilled oil or something worse. He backed off. It wasn't his problem, he told himself. Whoever owned the truck would come back for it. Probably passed out somewhere, maybe in a ditch, maybe in the trees. He'd seen worse, but the next morning the truck was still there. Still. Idling. Still locked. Still soaked. That second morning, Jimmy called the sheriff. Deputy Marcus came by, chewing sunflower seeds and looking about as concerned as a man who'd just come off a night shift could manage. He knocked, he peeked, he ran the plate. Nothing in the system, no reports, no stolen vehicles. He called a tow. The driver of the tow truck, a guy named JT who lived out by Christoval, hooked it up and tried to haul it off, but the chain snapped when he pulled. The second chain snapped too. On the third try, the engine roared, not idled. Roared like it was angry. JT nearly fell off his rig and refused to touch the damn thing again. Deputy Marcus tried to radio in the situation, but his radio went dead. So did his cell. 3 days went by. Then 5. The truck never moved, never stopped idling. Every morning, the driver's seat was soaked in that same dark fluid. It didn't smell like gas or oil or transmission fluid. It smelled old, sour, like wet leather and something that had been left in the sun too long. Jimmy told himself to stop checking it, but each morning, when he walked to the diner and flipped the sign to open, he couldn't help but look. And each time, he swore the fluid was higher, spreading. The seat, the floor mat, then the passenger side. By the end of the first week, it had reached the dashboard. Then the dream started. It began with the regulars, Darla Simmons, who sat by the window each morning with her crossword. Cody Parsons, who ran the local feed store and always smelled faintly of hay. And Clara Jones, the waitress who worked the early shift with Jimmy. They all started dreaming about the same thing, sitting in the truck, behind the wheel, unable to move. Something was always in the rearview mirror. Something tall, gaunt, just out of focus, like smoke shaped into a man. But they could feel it breathing. Clara quit after 3 days. Just left mid-shift. Darla stopped coming. Cody started drinking. Before noon. Jimmy tried to ignore it. He didn't believe in ghosts. His wife, Alice, used to. She'd kept candles in the window and sage in the kitchen. She'd been gone 2 years now, taken by a cancer that chewed her up faster than he could understand. She would have known what to do about the truck. She would have said something about spirits or death clinging to metal. But Jimmy just kept unlocking the door, serving coffee, pretending it wasn't all unraveling. One night, close to midnight, he sat alone in the diner, watching the truck from the front window. It hadn't stopped idling. Not once. And now there was a shape in the cab. He could see it, slouched in the driver's seat, its head low, like someone sleeping. But the windows hadn't been fogged over that night. The glass was clear. And what he saw sitting there didn't look human. Too long in the arms, neck bent wrong, skin that seemed to ripple like it was moving underneath. Jimmy grabbed his shotgun. He walked across the gravel lot, steps crunching like bones. He reached the truck, raised the barrel, and screamed, "Out, now!" The thing behind the wheel turned its head, slowly, like a puppet dragged on a wire. Its face wasn't right. Its smile was too wide, too full of teeth. Its eyes looked like water. Jimmy fired. The blast cracked the night, echoed into the empty fields. The window shattered, but the truck kept idling. The cab was empty again. He looked in. Nothing but the seat. It was full. Overflowing now. Black fluid dripping out the bottom of the cab, pooling around his boots. He stumbled back, slipped, dropped the shotgun. The puddle spread toward him, slow, deliberate. He ran. He didn't sleep that night. And he didn't open the diner the next. Morning. By sunrise, the truck was gone. Just gone. No tire marks. No spilled oil. Just a square of dead grass and gravel, and a faint scorch where the engine had sat idling for 10 days. They found Jimmy a week later, wandering near Twin Buttes Reservoir. Naked, shaking, muttering something over and over. It knows where. I live now. It knows where we all live. He never went back to the diner. It closed down not long after. The building's still there, but boarded up, windows painted black. People say sometimes, just before dawn, you can still hear a low, idle rumbling from the lot. Locals drive the long way around, especially truckers. Especially the ones who've seen something on the road they can't explain. Something old. Something leaking. Something that never turns off. The seat's still wet. That's what they say. And the rearview mirror? It shows you the thing that's waiting behind you, just close enough to climb in. The rest stop sat off Highway 281, just a few miles south of Lampasas, Texas. It wasn't anything special, just one of those unassuming roadside facilities. 2 faded picnic tables under a metal awning, a drink machine that groaned louder than it chilled, and a pair of concrete buildings squatting side by side, one for men, one for women, both with doors that always seemed to creak open too slowly. The tiles were chipped, the lights flickered, and something in the air always smelled faintly of mildew and old sweat. But it was stall 3 in the women's restroom that people whispered about. Locals had stories, quiet ones told over beer or behind the register at gas stations. No one said much, but everyone seemed to know if you were passing through after midnight, you didn't stop. And if you did stop, you didn't go inside. Not into the women's restroom. And definitely not into stall 3. It always started the same way. First, you'd hear them arguing. A man and a woman, voices sharp and low, not yelling but slicing like knives, just grazing flesh. The words were hard to make out, but the tone always curled your stomach. Accusations, regret, anger that had festered into something else. Then it would get quiet, just for a second, like the silence you feel before a car wreck. And then the screaming would start, hers, mostly. Raw and awful, the kind that strips your skin from the inside out. Sometimes his voice too, deeper, more. Guttural, like something was dragging itself out of him, or maybe into him. It echoed off those tile walls, even when there was no one there. Jesse hadn't heard any of the stories. Not before that night. He was driving back from Burnett, road-tired and irritable, and his girlfriend, Amanda, was scrolling through her phone. In the passenger seat, the screen casting that cold blue light on her face. They'd been fighting. Nothing serious, just that kind of quiet tension that builds up after too many hours in a car together, little annoyances stacking like bricks. She said he never listened. He said she always picked fights. They weren't yelling, not yet. But Jesse's knuckles were white on the wheel, and Amanda had her lips pressed tight enough to leave lines in her face. When he pulled into the rest stop, it was almost 12:40 a.m. The only light was the flickering flood lamp above the building, strobing just enough to cast shadows that twitched when nothing was moving. He didn't notice. He just needed to piss, maybe splash water on his face, breathe in the night air without hearing Amanda sigh for the 100th time. She stayed in the car while he went into the men's room. It was empty, quiet, a cricket chirped once from somewhere near the paper towel dispenser, and Jesse handled his business quickly. But when he stepped back outside, Amanda was already halfway across the parking lot, phone in her hand, purse slung over one shoulder. "I have to pee," she called. "You could have waited." Jesse shrugged. "Didn't think you wanted to walk in together." She gave him a look, and that was the last thing she said before pushing the door open. He waited by the car, leaned on the hood, looked at the stars, thought about how this trip had been a mistake, how maybe they'd grown too far apart, and this was their way of realizing it. Then, somewhere in the middle of that thought, he heard the voices, muffled at first, like through a thick wall. A woman. A man. The words twisted around each other, some spat in bitterness, others in sorrow. Jesse furrowed his brow. He stood upright. The voices were coming from the building, but the parking lot was still empty except for them. It wasn't Amanda. These voices were older, worn, strained from use. Then the scream. Long rising and so sudden it made him stumble back a step. He rushed to the door and froze. It was bleeding. A dark line ran down the inside edge of the stall door, thick and black, almost syrupy, like it had taken its time. The blood hadn't come from under the door, but rather through it, leaking like the paint itself had turned liquid. The door trembled slightly, rattling as though someone on the other side was bracing against it. And there under the metal stall he saw her feet, Amanda's shoes. Her jeans around her ankles. Jesse pounded on the door. "Amanda!" No response. Just more blood. And then a new sound. Laughter. Not Amanda's. This was deeper, cracked and hollow. The kind of laugh that sounded like it came from a mouth full of broken glass. It pushed through the walls and into Jesse's ears like static, pressing so hard it felt like his skull would burst. He kicked the stall door. It didn't budge. He backed up, rammed it with his shoulder, metal groaning but holding. He screamed her name again, and then the light above him flickered once and went out. Darkness swallowed the bathroom. The blood smell hit stronger, thick, metallic, and hot. And when the light buzzed back to life, Amanda was gone. The stall door hung open, gently swinging. There was no blood, no shoes, nothing but empty tile and a soft, wet sound like something dragging across porcelain. Jesse ran. He didn't stop. Until he reached the car, breath ragged, hands trembling so badly he fumbled the keys. He opened the driver's door and collapsed into the seat. But when he looked up at the rearview mirror, Amanda was there sitting calmly in the backseat. But her face, it wasn't hers. Not anymore. The features were almost right. Almost. But her eyes were sunken, too large in their sockets, and her mouth twitched in tiny spasms like something underneath was trying to get out. Her skin sagged around the chin, too pale, too slick. And when she smiled, it was with teeth that didn't fit. Like they'd belonged to someone else. She leaned forward and whispered, "You never listened." Jesse screamed. The car door opened by itself. The engine stalled even though he hadn't started it. The dome light blinked on and off. And when he looked back, she was gone again. The cops found Jesse a mile down the road, barefoot and bleeding from the ears, wandering the median and muttering about the door that bled. He was taken to a facility outside Austin where he remained for 7 months. He wouldn't talk, wouldn't sleep, just sat there, eyes on the corner of the ceiling, repeating the same phrase. She never left. She's still in there. They never found Amanda. The search turned up no prints, no signs of struggle, no blood, no evidence at all. Just an empty stall. One that smelled faintly of something rotten. One that sometimes, around 12:45 a.m., echoed with voices from a fight long finished. People say it was a murder-suicide, back in the 70s. A couple pulling off after a night out, arguing in the women's stall because she wanted to leave and he didn't. Some say he stabbed her. Others say she shot him. The only thing everyone agrees on is that they both died in there, angry and unfinished, and that they never really stopped. So now, the locals avoid that rest stop. Truckers keep their engines running when they pull in. Parents keep their kids close. And if anyone hears raised voices echoing from the building after midnight, they don't go in. They just drive, because that stall still argues. And if you knock, it might answer with a scream. Or something worse. They say the flames never really went out on that stretch of Highway 183 just outside Goldthwaite. People in town still remember the smell, the kind of burning that doesn't come from wood or oil, but something more final, like hope going up in smoke. The old Sinclair station caught fire in '92, middle of the night. No lightning, no faulty wiring, no cigarette left burning. Just fire. The kind that blooms up from under the floor. 4 people inside and not a single body was ever found, not even bones. Nothing left but that melted concrete slab and the shell of the restroom in the back, the only structure that didn't collapse, as if the fire had swerved around it, spared it on purpose. Nobody understood why. When they rebuilt the new rest area in 2007, they paved right over the old lot. A sleek, government-planned stop with bright vending machines, picnic tables, and fluorescent lights meant to stay on all night. They even installed new bathrooms, bright white tiles, steel stalls, and a wide mirror above the sinks. But something about it never felt right. The janitors complained the floor tiles in the men's side would go dark around 1 a month. Not dirty, not wet, just black. Black like oil or shadow or both. You'd mop them and they'd smear like ash. Worse, visitors started reporting the smell. A sour, stinging stink like gasoline and burning air. Even after the building passed inspection, people avoided that. Restroom once the sun dipped below the scrub oaks. It was mid-July when Travis Lang pulled into the lot, bone-tired and half-lost after his shift driving from Amarillo. He worked for a cattle feed supplier and had spent the last 12 hours hauling protein tubs across the dry Texas panhandle. He was supposed to stop in La Paz for the night, but that buzzing headache and the rumbling in his gut said otherwise. He figured 10 minutes to stretch, take a leak, and maybe grab a bag of chips if the vending machines weren't on the fritz. He didn't notice the scorch marks circling the lot until he parked, just a faint ring, maybe 10 feet wide, like someone had once drawn a circle in fire around the bathroom building. He stepped out into the thick night air, hot and unmoving, like a breath held too long. The lot was empty. No other trucks, no families on summer road trips, just cicadas buzzing their dry electric hum into the dark. The moment he pushed open the men's room door, the smell hit him, sharp, familiar. Gasoline, and underneath it, something worse like burnt fabric or animal hair singed too close to the skin. He almost turned around, but the headache had grown into a full throb behind his eyes, and his bladder wouldn't wait. The lights inside were humming overhead, but they didn't feel stable. Not flickering, exactly just pulsing. The kind. A flicker that only shows up in the corner of your eye. The stalls were clean, doors shut, nothing weird. But the floor. The floor was wrong. Where the tiles should have been a light gray-white, they were murky. Some had already gone black as tar, creeping inward like mold spreading in reverse. He stepped carefully, his boots making a soft crunch as if he were walking on sand. But there was nothing on his solace when he looked down, just the black spreading underfoot, and the air. It had a charge to it, like just before a summer storm, but with heat instead of wind. His breath tasted like pennies and smoke. He chose the middle stall old habit from years of road travel and locked the door. The latch stuck stiff with rust that hadn't been there a second ago. He did his business, keeping one hand on the latch in case it jammed. That's when he heard it, a soft scratch just behind the stall. Not in the next one over, but in the wall. A scraping like nails. Or maybe a match being struck over and over again. He paused, held his breath. Then it stopped. He wiped, flushed, opened the door, and saw the mirror above the sink's dot. It wasn't showing the bathroom. It showed flames. The sinks were melted. The ceiling gone, blackened and choked with smoke. The stalls were nothing but charred. Skeletons, twisted metal. And in the mirror, a man stood where Travis was standing, except it wasn't Travis. The man's face was scorched, flesh peeling in sheets down to glistening red. His eyes were white holes, flickering, reflecting fire. His mouth opened wide, jaw too loose, and something like a tongue rolled out. No, not a tongue. A matchbook. Still smoldering, Travis blinked. The mirror showed only him again. Sweat dripping, mouth hanging open, the air behind him calm. He turned just to be sure. The bathroom was untouched, quiet, clean. The black tiles had faded, back to their dull gray. He backed toward the door, footsteps echoing louder than they should have, like the walls were listening. When he reached for the handle, he felt it. Heat under his palm. He yanked his hand back. A single spark hissed from the metal handle. The lights above groaned, flickered once, and in that split-second darkness, something struck a match right next to his ear. When the lights returned, the door opened easily. Outside, the air smelled of sagebrush and heat. No gas, no fire, no ash. Travis bolted to his truck and didn't stop until he hit the highway. But later, when he made it to the next town and pulled into a motel, he caught a whiff of gasoline again. He checked his clothes. Nothing. But when he opened his glove box to grab a pen, a single burnt match rolled out and landed on his laptop the next morning. He called in sick for the first time in 6 years. Then he drove back to that rest stop, this time in broad daylight. The lot was full of travelers, kids running toward picnic tables, a couple unloading their dog near the grass. He went inside the men's room. No smell, no black tiles. The mirror was just a mirror, but etched into the third stall's metal wall was a name, his name. And under it, written in something that had bubbled the surface like acid, "Strike again to stay." That night, he dreamed of flames licking up his legs, the heat peeling back his skin like wrapping paper. In his hand, a box of matches with no logo, just the faint outline of a flame and a date written underneath. August 3rd. That was still 2 weeks away. Every night since, he dreams it again. The same fire, the same match, the same date, and each morning, the smell on his pillow is stronger. Gasoline, ash, and sometimes, when he closes his eyes in the mirror to rinse his face, he sees his reflection behind the glass just a moment. Too late standing perfectly still while the world around it burns. It stood alone, near the back corner of a dusty rest stop off Route 380 between Post and Throckmorton and Old Payphone. Greenish from sunrot and long disuse, bolted to a cracked brick wall beside the vending machines no one ever stocked anymore. Most folks didn't even notice it. They pulled in, used the bathroom, maybe stretched their legs under the pale canopy of the West Texas sky, and left. But it was there. Some said it had been there since the 70s. Others claimed it was newer, a leftover from some old trucker's route. There were even those who said the state never installed it, that it just showed up one night. Humming low like a tuning fork. Elliot was just looking to take a piss and grab a Coke. He hadn't planned to stop, but the long haul from Lubbock to Weatherford was wearing on him, and his bladder had started that angry ache it got when he ignored it too long. He pulled in late sky already bruising with night, bugs doing suicide dives on his windshield. He left the engine idling, windows cracked. His mom had warned him about stopping at these places after dark, back when she was alive and still calling him every Thursday. Too many lonely folks, she used to say. Too many things folks don't want to see in the dark. But Elliot was 37 now, lived alone in a duplex, and didn't have time for ghost stories. He noticed the payphone on his way out of the men's room, drawn by the way it stood out, too clean, too untouched by the years around it. The receiver dangled like it had been dropped just seconds before. He stared at it, just stared. There was no sound, no wind, no bugs buzzing anymore. Even the faint hum of the vending machine behind him had gone silent, like the rest stop itself was holding its breath. Then it rang just once, a flat, mechanical chime. The sound of a deadline waking up. Elliot flinched. He looked around, but the lot was empty except for his pickup and a long-haul rig parked crooked by the trash bins, cab dark. He turned back to the phone. It rang again. He didn't mean to answer it, not really. But something about the way the air had changed, how the crickets stopped, how even his heartbeat felt muffled. It was like the world leaned in, waiting. He picked up the receiver. Elliot. It was his brother's voice, not a maybe, not a memory. Kyle. Clear as a bell. A voice he hadn't heard since the coroner zipped him up in a black bag outside. A wrecked Camaro on Farm Road 707 in 2009. Elliot's. Knees almost gave out. Kyle? He whispered. Yeah, the voice said, soft and tired and real. I've been trying to reach you. Elliot staggered back a step, still clutching the receiver. His breath caught in his throat, hot and trembling. You're not? He started. I know, the voice said, but I don't have long. You shouldn't be here. Not tonight. It's coming. What's coming? Elliot said, his voice cracking. The phone went dead. Nothing. Not even a dial tone. He pressed the switch hook. Slapped it. Nothing. He turned, heart slamming in his chest. The crickets were back. The vending machine clicked to life again. The faint whir of a cooling fan kicking in. Somewhere out on the highway, a semi rolled past. Its tires a long exhale across the asphalt. Elliot backed away, still holding the receiver like it might bite him. It finally slipped from his hand and hit the side of the phone box with a thud. He got in his truck and drove. But the voice stayed. It wasn't just memory. He heard it again the next night. Not from the phone, but from his dreams. Kyle, standing by the side of the road, bloody from the crash, face gray and worn. It's coming, he whispered again, and it remembers you. Elliot didn't sleep much after that. He kept thinking about the way Kyle had said his name. Not just like a greeting, but like a warning. Like someone trying to shout across a sinking ship. By the end of the week, Elliot went back. He told himself it was to prove it had just been stress, a trick of the mind. Long drives, caffeine, buried grief, that kind of thing. He packed a cooler, told his boss he needed a mental health day, and left before dawn. He reached the rest stop around noon. Bright sun overhead. Clear sky. A couple of minivans in the lot. Some kids kicking a ball near the picnic tables. It looked normal, but the payphone was still there. Still too clean. Still too green. He walked up slowly. No one else seemed to notice it. The father from the van didn't even glance in its direction. Even when Elliot nearly brushed shoulders with him, he reached out, touched the receiver. It was cold. Then it rang. Once. Twice. He picked it up, but it wasn't Kyle this time. Elliot? The voice was female, broken, soft, baby. He nearly dropped the phone. Mom? He said, "Oh, sweetheart." She sounded like she used to when he was 10 and sick with a fever, whispering through the crack in the door. "It's bad. It's real bad." "What's bad?" His voice shook. "Mom, what's happening?" "They're listening." "You shouldn't." Have answered again. "It draws them. You have to go. You have to." The line clicked out, then silence. Not dead silence. A sound. A breath dot slow and wet and close, like someone was right on the line. Inhaling through something broken. Elliot hung up and staggered back. He felt cold all over. This time, the world didn't resume. The crickets didn't come back. The vending machine didn't whir. And when he looked around, the lot was empty. No vans. No kids. No sky even. The clouds were wrong gray and spinning. Like someone had stirred the sky with a spoon. He ran to his truck. Tried the door. Locked. The key didn't fit. It wasn't his key. The cab inside was different. It wasn't his truck. It was his dad's. The one they'd buried in. Single quotes 98. Elliot turned and sprinted back to the payphone, hoping he could call someone anyone. It was ringing again. He didn't want to answer. Every instinct screamed not to. But his hand moved on its own, fingers cold, like someone else had reached up through him. He lifted the receiver. This time there was no voice, just the sound of something. Heavy dragging across gravel, a slow scrape, a shuffle. Then, faintly, the sound of bare feet slapping against concrete. Closer, closer. He dropped the phone. He turned around and saw it. It wasn't a person. It was shaped like one. Tall, long-limbed, skin like cigarette ash. No mouth, no eyes, just folds where a face. Might have been. It stood by the vending machines. Waiting. Then it stepped forward. Elliot didn't remember screaming, but later he would recall the raw taste of blood in his throat. He ran into the brush behind the rest stop. Thorns slashed at him. His jeans tore, but he didn't stop. He didn't stop until he reached the highway. But the road was empty. No cars. No sky. Just the thing walking behind him. Patient, always just far enough back that he never saw it again. He kept walking for hours, maybe days. He never found his truck. Never saw the rest stop again. Eventually, someone found him wandering near a gas station in Graham, barefoot and wild-eyed. He was muttering into a dead payphone nailed to a pole in the back lot. They said he kept repeating the same thing over and over. It called me. It said my name. And the payphone? There was no line running to it. No number. Just a faint, humming dial tone that never stopped. They say the building was cursed, though no one ever used that word out loud. Not in this town. Not in Garrison Creek, Texas, where the streets shut down by 8 and the loudest thing you'd hear after dark was the whine of a lone coyote or the rusted clank of a screen door swinging in the wind. But everyone who worked a late shift at the old government annex building on Willow Street knew something was wrong with that place. Most didn't last long. A month, maybe 2, and they'd find another job closer to the center of town. Something with better lighting and more people around. But the janitor stayed. Always stayed. No one knew his real name. The clipboard in the main office just said, H. Garcia. He showed up exactly at 11:59 p.m. every night, pushing the same wheeled cart with 2 dented buckets and a mop handle worn smooth by years of grip. You'd hear the squeak of the wheels long before you saw him. A slow, rhythmic squeal that echoed down the tile hallways like a rat dragging something metal behind it. He never spoke. Not once. I worked security there for 4 years, midnight to 8 a.m., and not a single word passed between us. I tried once on my first night. Gave him a polite, "Evenin', sir," when I saw him crouched by the 3rd floor restroom. He looked up just for a second, and his eyes were dark in a way that made me feel like I'd interrupted something sacred, or wrong. I never spoke to him again, but every night, without fail, he cleaned the same spot. 3rd floor, hallway B, just outside. Room 314. The tile there looked darker than the rest. No matter how often they stripped and re-waxed the floor, it always came back dull gray with faint smears of red that ran along the base of the wall and up in a pattern no one wanted to talk about, like 2 hands. Bloody hands dragging upward, as if someone had tried to crawl out of the floor. I saw it myself the first week. I was doing rounds, maybe 1:30 a.m., and heard the mop slapping against tile. When I rounded the corner, there he was. Back to me, swaying side to side in this slow, almost hypnotic rhythm. The smell hit me first, copper and bleach. The kind of sharp stink that gets inside your sinuses and makes your gums ache. The floor looked freshly cleaned, still wet, but I swear to God I saw something underneath. Not just a stain deeper than that, like the blood wasn't on the floor, but in it. And those handprints, they were faint but unmistakable. 2 perfectly shaped to be a trick of the mop. 5 fingers each, nails long, digging. I didn't say anything. Just backed off and made a note in my log. Janitor cleaning tile hallway B, strong chemical smell. But over the weeks, it got worse, not the janitor. He stayed the same, silent, methodical, eyes always half-lidded like he hadn't slept in years. It was the building. The lights in the stairwell would flicker when he passed. Elevators would stall at the 3rd floor, no matter what button you pressed. And the cameras every night between 2:04 and 2:11 a.m., the hallway feed outside 314 would cut to static. Not once, every single night. It said it was a wiring issue, but they never fixed it. One night, out of some stubborn mix of boredom and bad judgment, I decided to follow him, not directly. I kept to the far end of the hall, making sure to let his squeaking wheels and mop slaps guide me. He moved slow, but steady, turning each corner like he knew exactly how long the building would tolerate his presence in each corridor. But when he got to hallway B, he stopped dead still. I ducked behind the vending machine and watched as he set the mop aside and reached into the cart. Instead of more bleach or rags, he pulled out something wrapped in old brown butcher paper. He unwrapped it slowly, reverently, like it was a family heirloom. It was a bone, a human femur. Yellowed, brittle, with deep scratch marks around the top, like something had clawed at it. He set it on the floor beside the mop bucket and began humming. I couldn't place the tune. It wasn't music. It was more like a vibration, a sound that didn't come from his throat but from the air itself. My skin crawled. I backed up, and the vending machine behind me let out a mechanical thunk like something had shifted inside. The janitor froze, turned slowly, his eyes locked onto mine. I swear they weren't human anymore. Too wide, too still. Reflective like animal eyes caught in high beams. But he didn't move, just stared, then turned back to the wall, picked up his mop, and continued cleaning the invisible blood. I didn't sleep when I got home that morning. I put in a transfer request that day. They didn't approve it. 2 weeks later, we lost someone. A young woman from the records department stayed late on audit night. She left the building around 11:20 p.m., never made it to her car. Security footage caught her walking toward the exit, but she passed hallway B, paused, then turned toward it. That was the last image of her. Just her back. Her ponytail swinging. She was smiling, like she'd seen someone she knew. They found her keys in the stairwell. Nothing else. After that, they shut off access to the 3rd floor after hours. Installed new locks. But somehow, every night, I still heard the squeak of that mop bucket. Still caught the smell of bleach and copper drifting down the vents. One night, Maybe 6 months later, the janitor didn't come. Midnight passed. 1 o'clock. Nothing. The halls were quiet in a way I'd never heard before, like the entire building was holding its breath. I started my rounds just before 2, and when I got to hallway B, I saw it. The blood was back, but this time, it was fresh, still wet, glistening on the tiles like it had been painted seconds before. The handprints were there again, but they'd moved. Higher up the wall now, almost to the ceiling. And something new, a smear of red just under room 314's door, shaped like a shoe print dragging backward. I unlocked the office and stepped inside. The room was empty. Desk, filing cabinet, overhead lights still humming. But the air was ice cold. And on the far wall behind the desk were words written in red. He was cleaning me. I transferred the next day. Took a job across the state. Quit night shifts. Altogether, I don't talk about Garrison Creek anymore. Haven't stepped foot within 100 miles of that town. But sometimes, when I'm driving late and the roads are empty and the station's cut to static, I swear I hear it the squeak of a mop bucket, and beneath it, the sound of humming. Getting closer. It started in the middle of nowhere, as these things often do. A 2-lane blacktop stretching across the West Texas plains. Somewhere between Midland and Monahans, a stretch of scrubland so empty it felt like the sky had swallowed the world whole. No towns, no exits, not even a proper shoulder. Just that long smear of cracked asphalt, sagebrush blinking in the high beams, and the occasional glint of jackrabbit eyes before they scattered into the darkness. Wayne Trask was hauling antique furniture in his rust-colored Ford F250, an old '89 model with a stubborn radiator and a cab that smelled like sweat and gas station coffee. He was headed west toward El Paso, trying to beat the worst of the heat, though out here, the difference between day and night wasn't much. The truck was heavy, sagging a bit in the back from the weight of the cargo he'd picked up from a storage. Auction and Abilene chests of drawers, broken lamps, a dusty roll-top desk with pigeonholes full of old receipts from the 40s. He wasn't sure why he took this route. The map apps had recommended I-20, but he'd missed the turnoff near Big Spring and decided to ride it out, thinking maybe the back roads would be faster. It was just after midnight when the headlights started acting funny. At first, he thought it was nothing, just a flicker, the kind that happens when you hit a bump too hard or when the alternator's starting to give. But then it happened again. Not just flickering, but pulsing, steady, rhythmic, on-off, on-on-on, off-on. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and leaned in closer. The lights on his truck weren't malfunctioning. They were blinking in patterns. It wasn't random. It felt timed, deliberate. He slowed down, his foot hovering above the brake pedal. A strange chill slid down the back of his neck, like someone had cracked open a freezer behind him. The desert around him was silent, dead silent. No wind, no night birds. Even the insects seemed to be holding their breath. Wayne pulled over, tires crunching against the edge of the road. He killed the engine, expecting the headlights to cut too, but they didn't. They stayed on, flickering in that strange mechanical sequence. On, off, off, on, off, off. Again, the same pattern repeating. He squinted. Then it hit him he'd seen this before. During a stint in the army, stationed out in Kuwait, a comms guy had shown him how to signal SOS using a flashlight. Morse code. Wayne reached into the glove box and pulled out a crumpled field guide to signaling and survival. He flipped to the back. The Morse chart was printed right there. He compared the blinks. Get out. He dropped the booklet. His heart thudded. In his chest, a hot pulse that made his neck ache. He tried the ignition. Nothing. Not even a click. The radio sputtered on by itself, crackling to life with static so sharp it made his teeth buzz. Then a voice, a whisper really, beneath the white noise. "Still here." Wayne flinched, recoiling like he'd been slapped. The voice was low and drawn out, like someone was trying to speak through a wind tunnel. He stepped out of the truck. Bad idea. The second his boots hit the ground, he knew something wasn't right with the air. It had gone thick like breathing through wet wool. And warm too, like heat coming off a grill, only there was no fire, no source. He stepped out further and looked. Back at the truck. The headlights were still flickering. Only now, the front of the truck looked wrong, like it was stretched, elongated. He blinked, and it snapped back to normal. Just for a second, though. When he looked again, the grill was sagging, warped, like someone had microwaved the hole. Front end. Then came the sound. Not an engine, not footsteps, but something slow and wet. Like dragging something heavy across sand, a slither. It came from behind him, and when he turned, there was nothing. Just blackness and sagebrush. But then he saw it a shimmer. Like heat mirage. It moved across the road, low and silent, like something cloaked in distortion. Get out. The lights pulsed again. Wayne tried the truck door. Locked, even though he hadn't locked it. He fumbled for the keys in his pocket. They were gone. He slammed a fist against the window. Inside, the ignition light was glowing red. The static on the radio climbed into a screech that made his ears ring. Then it all cut off. Silence. Like someone had dropped a thick velvet curtain over the world. Then dash motion. Something brushed against his leg. He jumped back, landing hard. On the road, dust flew up around him. He scrambled to his feet, eyes wide and darting. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. The same way you know something's behind you in a dark hallway. It moved with intent, circling. The headlights blinked again. Only now it wasn't Morse. They blinked in a way that looked almost watchful. The cab light came on. The driver's side door opened by itself. Wayne turned and ran. He didn't think, just sprinted down the road, away from the truck, from the impossible blinking lights, from the invisible thing that had curled around him like smoke. His boots pounded the asphalt. He didn't stop until the truck was nothing but a pinprick of light. In the distance. That's when he heard it. The engine started. His engine. The same familiar cough choke of the old Ford trying to wake up. It revved once, twice, then went quiet. The headlights blinked once more. But he was too far to read the pattern. He kept running. He didn't stop until he found an old roadside diner about 5 miles down, boarded up and leaning to one side like it had been abandoned for decades. He waited there until sunrise, huddled beneath the awning with the smell of grease and decay seeping from inside. When the sun finally came up, he walked back. He didn't find the truck on the road. He found it half a mile into the desert, flipped. On its roof, wheels spinning slowly in the morning breeze. The driver's door was hanging open, keys still in the ignition. The dashboard lights blinking weakly. He called for help. Sheriff's office from Pecos sent a deputy. The guy looked at the truck, then at Wayne, then back at the truck. Funny thing, he said, chewing a toothpick. That patch of road. People avoid it. Locals call it the signal stretch. Had a couple accidents out there. Lights flickering, engines dying. One guy said he saw his dead brother in the mirror. Another swore the sky blinked at him. Wayne didn't say anything. He didn't tell the deputy about the Morse code. He didn't say a word about the voice on the radio, or the thing that moved through the heat shimmer like a shadow with a will. He just nodded. Later that afternoon, after the tow truck flipped the F-250 back onto its wheels, Wayne went to retrieve his things from the cab. Everything was there, except the booklet from the glove box. The one with the Morse chart. It was gone, but scratched faintly into the inside of the windshield. Barely visible unless the sun hit it just right, were 3 words, etched as if by fingernail or broken glass. Still here, Wayne Dot, and underneath it, 3 long lines. 3 short. 3 long dots SOS. He never drove west again. Never left town after dark. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the power flickers or a porch light blinks just a bit too slow, he swears it's trying to talk to him again, and he's terrified that next time, he might understand what it's really trying to say. She was always seen along that same dusty stretch of FM 3148, about 15 minutes southwest of Waco, just where the woods start to creep in from both sides, and the road turns narrow and nervous. There's no streetlights out there, no shoulder. Either, just enough asphalt to keep a pickup from dipping into the ditch if the driver stays alert. Most locals knew to pass through without stopping, especially near the old railroad crossing, the one that hadn't seen a train in 40 years, but still made your radio crackle and hiss for no good reason. They said the girl started showing up sometime in the late 90s, but folks who'd lived out that way longer claimed she was there way before that, since maybe the early 80s, maybe even longer, though how that'd make sense no one could. Explain. She looked about 16, 17 at most. Thin, with straight black hair that hung down to her shoulders and blunt bangs cut too short above her pale forehead. Her eyes were too big for her face and dark enough to make you think of empty basements and late-night knockings. She wore a faded purple windbreaker, acid-washed jeans, and old white sneakers with pink laces clothes that didn't belong in this decade or even the one before it. She didn't speak loud, didn't wave or cry for help. She just stood there, on the side of the road, usually right where the trees bowed low, casting her in shadow even under the noon sun. Her thumb half raised like she wasn't sure if she really wanted a ride or not. But if you stopped, if you slowed down just enough to catch her eyes, she'd walk toward you with a strange, floaty step, like she wasn't fully grounded in this world anymore. And she'd lean just slightly into the open passenger window and say one thing, "Will you remember me?" Her voice was small, but not childlike, calm, hollow. She didn't plead, didn't smile, didn't blink much either. If you said yes, if you nodded or told her get in, then you never made it out of that stretch alive. Not really. The first one I heard about was Billy Kern, a high school senior from Lorena who'd borrowed his mom's minivan to take his girlfriend to the movies. He'd dropped her off after a fight, was driving back alone when he picked her up. He never made it home. The van was found 3 days later in a muddy clearing just 10 feet off the road. Not a scratch on it, doors locked from the inside. The engine was still warm when the sheriff arrived, but Billy was gone. No footprints in the mud, no blood, no signs of struggle. Just a faint smell of lavender perfume in the cab and a smudged handprint on the inside of the passenger window. Shaped like someone had been clawing at the glass from inside but gave up halfway through. Then there was Cindy Morrill, a long-haul trucker who stopped for what she thought was a stranded teenager. One foggy morning around 3 a.m., her rig was later. Found parked perfectly between 2 trees like someone had guided it there by hand. The cab door was wide open, but Cindy was missing. Her dash cam showed static for 2 minutes before the footage cut out. When they recovered the audio, the only sound was her voice saying softly, "Sure, sweetheart, get in." After that, more stories started coming out. A pastor heading to Waco for a Sunday sermon, a traveling insurance salesman, a woman in her 30s going back to Houston after visiting her mother. Every one of them disappeared in the same 2-mile stretch near that forgotten railroad line. And everyone had one last call or text that sounded something like, "There's a girl here. Looks like she needs help," or "just pulling over to check on someone." The county put up a sign warning about roadside hazards, then later blamed sinkholes. But we all knew. People whispered about her in diners and feed stores, saying maybe she was the ghost of a girl who died hitchhiking in the 80s, or maybe a runaway who never got found. Some thought she was something worse, something old wearing a teenage girl like a mask. One night, against better judgment, I went looking for her. It was late March. Sky the color of wet slate, wind carrying a storm from the west. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I just filled up my tank, printed out a map with the old rail line marked in red, and left around midnight. I brought a dash cam, a voice recorder, a spare phone, and a little silver cross my grandmother once told me kept. The restless dead at bay. I drove slow, my headlights catching the thick brush and wooden fence posts as I moved deeper into the woods. I passed mile marker 23, then the railroad tracks rusted, crooked, split by weeds. I slowed there, rolled down the passenger window just a crack, and there she was, standing maybe 20 yards ahead, half in shadow, half in the shimmer of my high beams. She didn't move at first, just stood still, that windbreaker flapping slightly in the wind. Then she stepped forward. Her movements were too smooth, like a video stuck between frames. I felt every hair on my arms rise. My fingers tightened on the wheel. My throat felt dry and tight, like I'd swallowed dust. She walked up to the window and leaned down, her eyes meeting mine. "Will you remember me?" I should have said no. Should have floored the gas and never looked back. But something in me, something curious or broken, made me nod. Just once. The next thing I remember, it was morning. My truck was parked just past the crossing, engine off. The passenger door was open, and the seatbelt lay stretched and twisted across the empty seat. There was something faintly sweet in the air, like old perfume and damp moss. My phone was dead, my voice recorder cracked. The cross was gone from my neck, just a burned string left dangling under my collar. I checked the footage when I got home. Hours of blank video, punctuated by static. But the last few seconds, those played clear as day. The camera showed the passenger seat slowly darkening, like something heavy and wet had settled there. And then, just before the video cut to black, a voice whispered, not the girl's voice, but something deeper, more ancient. "You said yes." Since then, I've been different. I forget things. Big things. My father's birthday. The name of my first dog. Faces of people I loved. It's like something's peeling memories off me, piece by piece. At night I see her standing at the end of my bed, hair limp, eyes wide. She never moves, just watches, waiting for me to forget enough to make room for her. They say the people who disappeared never really died, that they're still out there, somewhere between memory and nothing, trapped in the promise they made. And once you promise to remember her, she remembers you. So don't stop if you see her. Don't roll down your window. Don't look into those eyes that feel deeper than any grave. Because the second you say yes, your story's already written. And it always ends the same. With silence. And something clawing its way back into this world through the cracks you left behind. It started like most of the weird ones do, in a place too normal for anyone to think something's off. A truck stop restroom out near Balmerhea, just past where the hills flatten and the stars start to feel close enough to touch. One of those rest stops where the floor stays wet for no reason and the mirror's always foggy, even if it's dry outside. The kind of place nobody wants to linger in longer than they need to. But sometimes, like with the guy this story's about, he didn't have much of a choice. His name was Ron Harlan, a long hauler with 30 years of miles behind him, more grease than blood in his veins, and a photo of his late wife Marla taped above his dash. Marla died 6 years back from pancreatic cancer. Went quick. Too quick for a goodbye. Ron didn't talk much about it, but the sadness in his eyes wasn't the kind that faded. He still wore his wedding ring, rubbed it when he was nervous, and whispered her name under his breath when the road stretched out too long and too dark. It was around 1:30 in the morning when he pulled into that rest stop. The lot was mostly empty except for a minivan and a beat-up Jeep missing its front license plate. The moon hung low, fat, and orange like a warning light. Ron was exhausted, shoulders stiff, bladder screaming. He parked his rig near the edge, took the keys, and shuffled toward the building, boots crunching on gravel that sounded unusually loud in the silence. The restroom door creaked open with a metallic groan. It smelled of urinal cakes and old soap. One flickering fluorescent tube gave the place a sickly yellow hue, and the light above the far stall buzzed like a dying fly. Ron ignored the stalls and went straight to the urinal. Business was business. He kept one ear on the door, always alert habit from decades on the road. When he was done, he moved to the sink. The water came out lukewarm and brown for the first few seconds, then cleared. He glanced up into the mirror and gave himself a tired once-over. Graying beard, eyes hollow, face carved by years of coffee and cigarettes. He washed up, reached for the soap, lathered, and finally turned toward the air dryer. It looked newer than everything else in that restroom. Sleek, chrome. The kind with the blue LED strip and the instructions that tell you to move your hands. Slowly beneath it. Ron didn't think much of it until he waved his hands under the nozzle, and instead of that high-pitched whoosh of hot air, it let out a shrill, piercing sound that made him recoil like he'd been shocked. At first, he thought it was broken. He stared at it, frowning, trying again. The second time, it didn't just scream, it called out, and it called out in her voice. Ron. He froze, stared at the machine like it had grown teeth. For a second, he thought maybe it was a trick of the acoustics. The wind outside, a recording glitch, a prank even. But then he heard it again, longer, clearer. Ron, help me. His knees buckled a bit. He grabbed the sink with both hands, knuckles. White. That voice wasn't generic, wasn't synthetic. It was hers, soft, southern, just like how she sounded when she used to wake him in the mornings with coffee in bed and a kiss on the shoulder. He looked around. The room was still empty, silent, except for the buzzing overhead and the occasional drip from the faucet beside him. He backed away from the dryer, heart thudding like a bass drum, and leaned his back against the tile wall. He stood there a long while, breathing heavy, until he finally mustered the courage to wave his hand under it again. Nothing. Then again. Ron. The fire. The basement. His mouth went dry. Marla had never died in a fire. She'd passed. Away in her hospital bed, surrounded by beeping monitors and antiseptic smells. But that voice was insistent, pleading. Each time he triggered the dryer, it told him more. Her voice distorted by static, echoing as if from deep underground, kept coming through. Bits of sentences. Phrases he didn't understand. Buried. They never knew. The light. The cellar under the house. And then one final word, stretched and shrieked into something not quite human. Run. The light above him blew out. The restroom dropped into dimness. The buzz stopped. Even the dripping stopped. All he could hear was his own breathing and the low hum of the dryer as it kicked back to life on its own. But this time, it didn't scream. It howled. Not Marla's voice anymore. This was something else. A low, animalistic moan that built into a high-pitched shriek like metal grinding against bone. Ron didn't wait around. He stumbled out the door, heart in his throat, sprinted across the parking lot like a man half his age, and jumped into his rig without bothering to zip up his jacket. The engine sputtered twice before turning over. He threw it in reverse, backed out fast enough to fishtail, then slammed it into drive and peeled out of that rest stop with the air brakes hissing like an exorcism. He didn't stop driving for 2 hours, not until he hit Fort Stockton, where the lights of a 24-hour diner finally made him feel human again. He sat at the counter, ordered black coffee, and stared at the wall for 20 minutes before the waitress even brought it over. She asked if he was okay. He said no. A week passed. Then 2. Ron didn't talk about what happened to anyone, but the voice haunted him. The things it said didn't line up. Or maybe they did and he just didn't want to think about it. He started digging old records, county deeds, blueprints of the house he and Marla had lived in just outside Odessa before she got sick. That's when he found it. The house had been built in the 1930s over what used to be a root cellar, long sealed up, no record of it after a fire in 1949. That destroyed the original structure, but the foundation had been reused and the new house built right over it. Their house. Ron remembered the old basement door, just a weird seam in the floor of the pantry. They'd always assumed it was just shoddy workmanship. 2 nights later, after pounding 2 fingers of whiskey and sitting with Marla's photo for an hour, he drove back. The house was still his, empty since she passed. A for sale sign, half tilted in the front yard. He let himself in, found the pantry, and pulled back the old linoleum. The seam was still there. He pried it up with a crowbar. There was a door. Burnt wood, old iron handle. It moaned when he opened it. The air that hit him smelled like ash and damp soil. He climbed down with a flashlight and found a narrow stone chamber. Walls scorched, charred beams. In the center, a metal table bolted to the ground, blackened but intact. And beneath it bones. Human. Small, not fresh. He didn't remember climbing back up. Didn't remember dialing the sheriff. Just remembered sitting on the porch when they arrived, flashlight still clutched. In his hand, muttering Marla's name over and over. The investigation was brief. The bones were dated back to the 1940s. Probably belonged to someone who died in the fire, they said. Maybe a squatter. No records. No explanation. No foul play, just a forgotten corner of Texas history. But Ron knew better. He never visited that rest stop again. Couldn't. Every time he tried, his truck would stall, GPS would glitch, tires would blow out. It's like something kept him away. Something that had used the scream of a machine to warn him, guide him to the truth. And that air dryer? A month later, a teenage hitchhiker used it and claimed he heard his sister's voice crying for help. She'd been missing for 3 years. They replaced the dryer after that, tore it out and tossed it. The new one works fine, they say, but some nights, if you listen real close, they say you can still hear it screaming, muffled, faint, like a whisper through the tile. A name, always a name. And if it's your name, you'd better run, because whatever speaks through that dryer doesn't just scream. It remembers. They called it the Wild Bend Rest Area, halfway between Junction and Sonora off I-10, nestled behind a tangle of live oaks and brush so thick it swallowed sound. You'd pass it without noticing if you blinked. A single faded sign leaned toward. The asphalt like it was too tired to stand straight anymore, and the parking lot looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since Reagan was in office. The vending machine still sold RC Cola and Code Red if you believe the rumors. But what really gave the place its reputation wasn't the soda or the stench of diesel clinging to the benches. It was the roadkill, not the kind that hit your tires and made you wince when you looked in the rear view. Not possums with their guts splayed or raccoons split open like dropped groceries. No, this was different. Stranger. More. Persistent. It started with the armadillos. People thought maybe the cold or the heat was making them twitch. You'd pull in for a midnight piss, see one lying in the gravel lot belly up, Pink flesh open like a peeled fruit, and then, on your way out 5 minutes later, it wouldn't be where you saw it. It wouldn't even be close to where you saw it. If a few drivers swore they found their tires coated with streaks of fresh blood, even though they never hit anything. Others said they parked beside an old carcass only to see it curled against the curb when they got back, like it had dragged itself a few feet closer to the shadow of the bathroom wall. But you know how stories go. Truckers lie, and road rumors spread fast. And then came Danny Ray, a part-time hauler who drove scrap metal between Houston and El Paso. Big guy, used to sleep with his cab doors unlocked and a .38 under his pillow. He told folks at the truck stop in Sonora that he'd stopped at Wild Bend because he couldn't hold it any longer. Said he nearly stepped on a dead fox in the lot. Swore it had only one eye and that it was still watching him, even with half its skull gone. He went to the bathroom anyway, came back, and the thing was gone. But there was a trail, a real, visible drag mark, like something with claws had pulled itself across the gravel. He followed it. Bad decision. He found it behind the trash bin, near the trees. Same fox, he said. Same broken jaw and splintered ribcage. But now its chest was rising barely, just enough to see the skin stretch and relax like old leather. He ran, jumped into his cab, and swore he felt something thump against the truck bed as he peeled out of there. He got to the way station 2 towns over, climbed out shaking, and told the guy checking his paperwork to look in the trailer. The inspector did. Said it was empty, but there were wet streaks along the inside wall like something had slid down. The metal smelled like rot and fur. Danny Ray quit the road 2 weeks later. Told his buddies over beer that the fox followed him home. Said he saw its reflection in the glass of his microwave one night. Burned the thing in a bonfire behind his trailer, then packed up and moved to Alabama. Last anyone heard, he was living off disability and writing letters to his dead wife. But the story that sealed the legend happened one October, just as the mesquite trees were browning and the nights got cold enough for your breath to cloud in front of your face. A family broke down a mile up the road and limped into Wild Bend hoping to call for help. Dad was some insurance adjuster from Midland, Mom was a school teacher, and their kid, a 10-year-old boy named Aaron, had a thing for lizards and old coins. They had one of those SUVs that looks like it could survive the apocalypse, but the alternator had other plans. They pulled into the rest stop around 8:30 p.m., just as the sun dipped behind the hills, and parked under the one flickering street lamp in the lot. Aaron wandered off while his parents argued over the warranty paperwork. There wasn't much around, except a single trail that curved behind the bathroom building and disappeared into the thicket. That's where he found it, a deer, or what was left of one. Not crushed like it had been hit by a semi, but laid out flat like it had been flayed by hand. The legs were intact but unnaturally straight, the hooves lined up like someone had posed them. The head was missing entirely. Just a stump, leaking dark, syrupy blood into the dirt. And flies, hundreds of them, buzzing but never landing. Crouched, fascinated. It didn't scare him. It should have. But there was something almost peaceful about how the thing was laid out, like it had chosen to die there. He reached out to touch the side of its flank, just to see if it was cold. It WS and single quotes to dot. The skin twitched beneath his fingers. Once, then again. He backed away slowly. Didn't scream. Just turned and ran. When he got back, he told his parents what he saw. His mom said it was probably a trick of the shadows. His dad offered to take a look, but by then the sun had dropped completely, and the idea of wandering behind a broken down building into a brush pile full of snakes wasn't appealing. They stayed in the car, locked the doors, waited for a tow. That never came. At 2:17 a.m., a passing trucker named Mel Thornhill stopped at Wild Bend for a piss. He noticed the SUV parked under the light with the doors wide open, No one inside. A soda can rolled slowly across the concrete near the curb like it had just been dropped. He didn't think much of it until he spotted the shapes, 6 or 7 of them, scattered along the edge of the parking lot. Some looked like possums. One was a dog, bloated and purple. Another looked human-sized but curled like a shrimp, naked and mottled. Every one of them was arranged the same way, limbs straight, head twisted to face the rest stop building. They didn't look freshly dead. They looked settled. Mel got back in his rig, didn't even take his leak, sped off like hell was in his rear view, and for all he knew, it was. The police found the SUV the next morning. No sign of the family. Not even footprints. The back seats were stained with something that looked like water damage. But the smell was wrong, something sweet and sharp, like spoiled meat in a sealed can. They searched the woods, called in dogs, sent divers to a nearby pond that hadn't been touched in months. Nothing. But over the next few nights, the animals came back. Dead ones. A raccoon beside the bathroom stall. A bobcat missing an eye. Even a cow-calf that had no business being that far off any ranch. All of them laid out the same. All of them facing the bathroom. And people started noticing something else. The blood trails moved. Not always right away. Sometimes it took hours. But if you waited long enough, they'd stretch. Sometimes just a few inches. Sometimes they'd disappear completely, only to reappear under a bench or near a vending machine, like something was crawling them along when no one was watching. Night, a DPS officer volunteered to stake out the place, set up a trail cam, parked on the lot with a thermos of coffee and a shotgun in his lap. He was never heard from again. When they found his cruiser, the engine was still running, the door was open, and the front seat was empty except for his flashlight, which was still warm. They found a rabbit beside the curb that hadn't been there the day before. Its paws were resting on his badge. Locals don't stop there anymore. They say the animals still shift if you're quiet long enough, that some nights you can hear soft scratching from under the trash bins, that if you pull in around 3 a.m. and turn off your headlights, you might see something crawling, slow and deliberate, from the far edge of the lot toward the door of the men's restroom. Always toward the restroom. Never away. They blamed the soil for a while. Talked about burial grounds, old myths, animal spirits disturbed by construction. But it never felt like a haunting, more like a magnet, a pull. As if something inside that rest stop was calling the dead back to it. Not just animals. Not anymore. They said it started with armadillos, and maybe it did. But whatever's under that cracked tile floor in Wild Bend is bigger now. It feeds slower, smarter, more patient. And the roadkill? That's just what it leaves behind when it's done with you. He was driving through the piney woods of East Texas, that stretch of nothingness between Lufkin and the Sabine River, where the towns thin out and cell service flickers like a dying light bulb. Mason Riggs wasn't a nervous man by nature. He'd driven 18-wheelers through snowstorms in Colorado and once had a deer bounce off his windshield like a rag doll without so much as flinching. But something about that particular stretch of Highway 103 made his knuckles clamp tighter around the wheel. Maybe it was the way the trees leaned in, thick with moss, almost conspiratorial. Or the way the air got colder for no reason around dusk, even in the heat of July. He'd passed a sign maybe 10 miles back, one of those green, state-issued ones, but it had been too rusted and bent to read. He hadn't seen another car in a good 20 minutes. Not a light from a porch, not a radio tower blinking in the distance, not even the sad flicker of a truck stop open late. Just forest. Dark, too quiet, with trees so tall they swallowed the sunset before it could even touch. The horizon. His gas gauge hovered just above empty, and his bladder wasn't doing much better. He muttered to himself, debating whether to pull off into the brush and take care of business when he saw it, just ahead on the right. Glowing blue and white sign that said simply, "Rest stop, next right." The font looked dated, like something from the 80s, neon flickering inside a glass case bolted to a post. But it was lit, and that meant electricity, which meant plumbing, and maybe even a vending machine if luck was really on his side. He slowed and took the narrow paved turnoff. It was freshly painted, oddly fresh, actually, like someone had just laid the striping that morning. The trees parted a bit, revealing a gravel loop with 2 long concrete parking spaces, a single-lane access road circling behind what looked like a squat cinder block building, tan, windowless, the kind that always smelled like bleach and old. Urine. A trash can stood near the door, chained to a pole. Mason parked, shut off the engine, and listened. Nothing. No chirping insects. No rustling of leaves. Just depressing kind of quiet. The kind that made you aware of your heartbeat. The door creaked when he pushed it open. Inside, a fluorescent bulb buzzed in the ceiling. There were 3 stalls, 2 sinks, a mirror cracked through the middle like a lightning bolt. No graffiti, which was strange for a place like this. Just a faint, sour smell, like boiled eggs and cleaning fluid. He took the middle stall, did what he had to do, and then went to wash his hands. He caught his reflection in the mirror drawn, tired and paler than he expected. While scrubbing, he noticed the faucet didn't make a sound. Water came out, warm even, but silent. No running noise. He tapped it off and stood listening. Nothing. Not even the buzzing bulb anymore. That's when he felt it. The prickly sensation of being watched. He turned quickly, half expecting a homeless guy or prankster kid to be standing there. But there was nothing. Just 3 empty stalls and a floor so clean it almost shone. He dried his hands and left in a hurry, not even bothering to glance back. Outside, the sky was a darker shade of blue, nearly black in patches. The rest stop looked ... different. Smaller, somehow. The sign at the turnoff was no longer lit, and when he looked back at the road, where he should have seen Highway 103, stretching off into the trees, there was nothing but forest. Dense, impenetrable. He climbed into his truck, slammed the door, and tried the ignition. The dashboard flickered. The GPS blinked but didn't start. No satellite connection. His phone had 0 bars. Not one. No signal, no Wi-Fi, not even SOS capability. He turned on the headlights and pulled forward, circling back to where he'd entered, but there was no road, only trees. Thick pine trunks, layered with creeping vines and moss. No exit, no shoulder. Just dark woods, like the rest stop had grown its own walls in the time he'd been inside. He panicked and threw the truck into reverse, slamming it backward until the gravel loop ended in a chain-link fence he hadn't seen before. It looked rusted through like it had been there for decades. He hadn't passed a gate coming in. There wasn't one. He was sure of it. He got out, hard hammering, and walked to the fence. Beyond it, the forest stretched on. But in the distance, deeper between the trees, he saw something, an old signpost, half fallen, choked in weeds. The same blue and white shape, barely visible under grime and rust. He pushed aside some vines and read the words. This rest stop. Closed 1987 by order of Texas. He staggered back. That wasn't possible. The pavement was fresh. The light had been working. The building had smelled like it was clean this morning. He'd washed his hands, damn it. He still felt the moisture on his skin. He turned and ran back to the truck. When he climbed in and tried to start it again, nothing happened. Not even a click. Just the wind, rising in sudden sharp gusts as if the woods were breathing. Or whispering. He stayed in the cab until morning. Every hour stretched like chewing gum in heat. He kept checking his phone, but it never changed. No bars, no signal, no time update. At some point in the night, something brushed against the side of the truck. Not once, multiple times. Soft at first, like hands, then harder. A scraping, then a dragging sound like fingernails down metal. He didn't look. He gripped the steering wheel and muttered prayers he barely remembered from childhood. By dawn, he saw a clearing between the trees where the road used to be. Sunlight poured through it like the forest had never closed in the first place. The sign was gone. So was the fence. The building, too. Just open gravel where it had been. His truck started like normal. His phone buzzed with old notifications. GPS came back online. He drove straight to the sheriff's office in Hemphill and tried to explain what happened. The deputy listened, face blank, then slowly shook his head. "There's no rest stop out there," he said. "Hasn't been one since '87. Closed it down after 3 people went missing. Never found the bodies. Locals say it was cursed. You're lucky to be alive." Mason didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded and left. He never told anyone about the scratches that appeared on his truck's passenger door that night. They looked like fingernail grooves. 5 of them, uneven, like someone reaching in desperation. Or warning. He sold the rig a week later, took up factory work in Conroe. Never drove long hauls again. But every now and then, usually right around dusk, he'd check his phone map just to be sure. And sometimes, when the clouds were thick and the trees rustled too hard, a pin would flicker into view just off Highway 103. No name, no road, just a marker. When he tapped it, his screen went black every time. There's a rest area just off Highway 281 between Lampasas and Burnett, tucked under a thicket of post oaks and scrub cedar, the kind of place you drive past without thinking twice, just another shaded pull-off with a couple of aging picnic tables and a half-dead trash barrel swarmed with flies in the summer heat. No bathrooms, no lights, just gravel, dust, and heat. Except there's one table third one down from the left, under a crook tree with bark peeled back like burnt skin that folks say is always wet. Always. Doesn't matter if it hasn't rained in weeks. Doesn't matter if the ground around it is cracked dry. That tabletop stays slick, red, smelling faintly metallic like iron and rot. And no one ever stays there long. The first time I stopped was in July, heading back from San Saba after burying my uncle. I was tired, and the heat had boiled my patience. I'd eaten nothing all day, and when I saw the pull-off, I figured I'd stretch my legs and scarf down the gas station sandwich sitting on the passenger seat. I pulled in, left the truck idling for the AC, and walked toward the shaded table. Even before I got close, something felt off. It wasn't just the heat, though it pressed on my skin like a thick hand. It was how still it was. No bird song. Number. Chirps. Just a low, constant buzzing from the flies that never touched the third table, the wet one. When I sat down, I felt the moisture immediately. It soaked through the back of my jeans, warm and sticky. At first, I thought it was sap, or maybe someone had spilled a soda. I stood up, annoyed, wiping my hand on my shirt, and that's when I saw it. It was red, not cola, not sticky sweet. It was blood, wet, fresh, still glistening in the light slanting through the branches above. There were no cuts on me, no dead animal nearby. And it hadn't rained. I backed away, heart hammering, and just then I heard a clatter, something small, rolling off the table and bouncing onto the dirt. I looked down and saw a tooth, a human tooth, yellowed at the root and jagged where it had broken. My legs locked for a second. My stomach knotted so fast I gagged. I didn't pick it up. I didn't think to take a photo. I just ran back to the truck, slammed the door, and sped off so fast gravel spat against the undercarriage like gunshots. I told myself I imagined it. Stress, lack of sleep. That maybe it was some sick joke. Some punk kids or meth heads playing games, but it stuck with me. I started researching not on the internet at first. Locals don't post about things like that online. You have to ask in person. Gas station clerks, old-timers at the feed store, waitresses at the diner who've seen too much to care. Turns out that picnic table's got a story. More than one. Back in the 80s, a young woman was found dead there. Body slumped over the table. Throat cut so deep her head was nearly off. No weapon found. Her car was still running. Purse untouched. Locals said it was some drifter. But no one ever confessed. No suspects. She was just found. Bled out on that table. In the 90s, a hitchhiker claimed to see someone sitting at that same table as he passed by around midnight, sitting completely still. Not eating, not moving, just staring out at the road. He got curious and went to see if the man needed help. Said the figure vanished right in front of him. Just disappeared. Left behind a pile of teeth, all baby teeth. Said he took one to a sheriff's deputy who laughed him off and told him to sober up. And in 2007, a group of teens dared each other to eat dinner there at night. Only one of them came back. She never spoke again. Just rocked back and forth in her hospital bed for years until her parents moved away. Her friends' bodies were never found, though their shoes were. And their teeth. I should have let it go. But the blood, the warmth of it, the way it didn't dry in the sun, it got under my skin. I kept thinking about the tooth I saw, the sound it made when it fell. I had to know more. So I went back. It was October. Cooler weather, nearly dusk. I parked farther away this time, off the road, in case I needed to leave fast. Brought gloves, a flashlight, a GoPro strapped to my chest. I walked slowly toward that same table, heart pounding like I was approaching the edge of a cliff. I couldn't see the bottom of. It was wet, again. The surface slick and dark, like someone had just finished bleeding out on it. And again, nothing else around was damp. I filmed it, touched it with my gloved hand. When I lifted my fingers, the red clung to the latex like molasses. I tried to collect a sample, but the moment I brought out the vial, I heard something move in the trees. Footsteps. Not heavy, not leaves crunching under boots. It was soft, bare, like someone walking on the pads of their feet. I turned, flashlight, sweeping the trees, and that's when I saw her. She stood just beyond the table, watching me. Pale skin, black hair matted against her forehead. Her clothes were soaked in blood. Not just stained, soaked. Her mouth was open wide, too wide, like her jaw had unhinged. And she was grinning. Her eyes weren't right. They were wrong in a way that makes your spine try to curl away from your skin. Black pits, but alive, twitching. Hungry. She didn't speak. She pointed, down at the bench. At the blood. I ran. I didn't stop until I hit the truck. Door slamming so hard it bounced back open. I started it, peeled out, heart thudding so hard my chest hurt. When I got home, I looked at the footage. I expected to see nothing. Expected the camera to have failed, but she was there, on film, for just a second. Her face staring directly at the lens before it fuzzed out. Her mouth opened wide, then wider, then impossibly wide until it filled the screen with black. Then static. Don't show that video to people. I deleted the file. But sometimes I dream about her, standing behind that table, smiling. And in those dreams, she whispers one word over and over: feed. Last week, I heard about another body found off 281. A man this time, traveling alone, car still idling, wallet untouched. They said animals must have gotten to him, but what kind of animals take nothing but the teeth? And still, the table's wet. Always, even now. Even after all these years. The county painted over it once, tried sealing it with some epoxy crap. Within 2 days, it was soaked again. A fresh pool of blood, warm to the touch. And always the smell sweet rot and copper. Like something's still bleeding, or still wants to. They could tear it out. Burn it. Pave it over. But it wouldn't matter. She'd find another bench, and she'd wait. The first time Terry saw the dog was around 2:15 in the morning, inside a grimy gas station bathroom just outside of Sweetwater, Texas. He'd been driving a straight 12 hours, fighting sleep and swerving to the blare of classic rock through his half-busted stereo. The caffeine from 2 energy drinks had finally decided to crash at the exact same moment his bladder reached critical mass. The station sat off a quiet stretch of Highway 70, its flickering sign barely hanging on to the on in station. He pulled in mostly on autopilot, the lot deserted except for his truck and what looked like a rusted-out sedan parked awkwardly beside a dumpster. Inside, the lights buzzed too loud. The place smelled like fried oil, stale coffee, and old pine. Cleaner. The cashier was nowhere to be seen. Maybe asleep in the back, maybe on a smoke break, maybe just gave up entirely. The bathroom was in the far back, down a short hallway that reminded Terry of a maintenance wing in a condemned motel. He pushed open the door, expecting it to creak. It didn't. It was too quiet. The kind of quiet where your own breath sounds. Rude. That's when he saw it. A dog. Medium-sized, maybe 30 or 40 pounds, with wiry black fur and a patch of gray on its face like soot. It stood still, right in front of the last urinal against the wall, not sniffing around, not pacing, not wagging its tail, just standing, perfectly centered, perfectly still. Staring dead at first, Terry froze. Thought maybe it belonged to someone. Inside. But there was no leash, no collar, and no sound. The thing didn't even blink. Its eyes were wide, glassy, and this part he would keep to himself for a while. They looked too human, not just intelligent, not just alert, but aware, like it was watching him with a focus that was cold, deliberate. Anatomically wrong. "Hey, buddy," he said, as soft and slow as if he were approaching a skittish animal. "You lost?" The dog didn't move. Terry stepped forward cautiously, aiming for the far stall. The other urinals were technically open, but no way was he unzipping next to that thing. As he passed, the dog growled. Low and wet, the sound of something burbling, up from too deep inside. It didn't bare its teeth or lunge, just that growl, like a warning from an old machine, grinding back to life after years of rest. He locked himself in the stall and relieved himself with one eye pressed to the gap between the door and the wall, never taking it off the dog. When he finished, he waited, listened. Silence. When he finally opened the door, the dog was gone. No sound of claws on tile, no barking, just vanished. The unease didn't leave him. Even back in the truck he kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a pair of glassy eyes staring from the back seat. But there was nothing. He told himself it was probably some stray with a weird look, maybe abused, maybe sick. Maybe it had slipped out when he wasn't paying attention, but it wasn't the last time he saw it. 3 nights later, at a truck stop west of Abilene, it showed up again. He'd stopped to shower and rest a bit before his next long haul. The place was well lit, active, not even remotely creepy. He waited in line behind 2 other drivers to use the restroom. And when the door opened, someone walked out fast, nearly knocking into him. Someone left a damn dog in there. Guy muttered, brushing past. Terry felt a cold spike down his back. He stepped inside, hoping, praying he was wrong. But there it was, standing at the last urinal, staring, same wiry fur, same patch of soot-like gray, same posture, and the same eyes. They didn't reflect light the way animal eyes should. They didn't flinch. They just followed him as he stepped around it again, choosing the stall farthest away. This time, it growled louder. He hurried through his business, heart pounding, and didn't bother washing his hands. When he came out, it was still staring. But now it had turned. Its body faced the urinal still, but its neck was twisted back toward him at a stiff, wrong angle. Too far to be natural. Too far to be painless. He didn't sleep that night. Kept the cab locked. Watched every reflective surface for signs of movement. Nothing. Over the next 2 weeks, it kept happening. 5 more times. Always the same. Early. Hours, roadside restrooms, far from towns, and always that same urinal. Always watching. Always growling. Once, he tried taking a picture of it with his phone, but the screen stayed black. Camera wouldn't open, like the lens knew better. Another time, he tried talking to it. He whispered, "What are you?" And the lights in the bathroom dimmed as the dog's head twitched slightly to the left like a person pretending not to hear, but listening very, very closely. One night outside Bollinger, Texas, he'd had enough. He stopped at a Love's, bought a cheap crowbar, and told himself if he saw that dog again, he'd bash its head in. That night, he found it already waiting. Not at the urinal this time, but in the corner, sitting, watching. Its head turned slowly when he entered, and its mouth parted not to bark, not to growl, but to speak. "You're late." Terry dropped the crowbar. The voice wasn't barking or growling. It was whispering. Male, low, wet, like air sliding through waterlogged lungs. The dog didn't move its mouth, but the voice came. From it, or through it. "I've been watching. You don't remember, do you?" Terry backed against the door. The dog stood. Its paws didn't click or scrape. They made no sound at all, like it floated just above the tile. "You forgot the man in the ditch," the voice said. "July 9th, near Midland. You hit him." "You?" Kept driving. Terry shook his head. I didn't hit. You watched him crawl. You turned up the music. Your tires were red for days." He wanted to scream, but his voice had sealed itself inside him. The dog stepped forward. Its eyes blinked for the first time, and when they opened again, they weren't eyes anymore. They were mirrors. And in them, Terry saw himself. Not as he was, but as he had been that night. Drunk, dazed, staring into the rearview as a shape. Flailed in his high beams. "No one ever waits forever," the voice said. "But I do." The bathroom door behind him slammed shut. Not with wind, not with force, but with finality. They found Terry's truck 2 days later in the lot. Keys in the ignition, engine cold. Doors locked from the inside. No one found him. But every so often, truckers say if you stop at the rest stop near Bollinger after 2 a.m., you'll hear it, not barking, not footsteps, but a low, wet growl coming from the last urinal. And behind it, a pair of eyes that don't blink, just watch. Wait. It was a truck stop just outside of Abilene, one of those stretches of concrete and neon that felt more like a mirage than a real place. The kind of spot where the vending machines blink too slowly, where the wind always seems to smell like burnt coffee and gasoline, and the silence between distant engine hums makes your thoughts louder than they should be. That evening, the sun had already dipped behind the far-off trees, leaving the whole place soaked in dim amber light. I'd been driving since dawn, hauling a load of medical-grade gloves down to Odessa, and I just needed a piss and a coffee. I parked my rig near the back, half hidden behind two long haulers that looked like they hadn't moved in weeks. I remember stepping into the bathroom and instantly noticing how cold it was. Colder than it should have been for June in Texas. The kind of cold that wasn't coming from a sea vents but from something else. Like the air itself was reluctant to be breathed in. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting jerky shadows across the cracked tile floor. As I passed the row of sinks, I caught a glance of myself in the mirror, messy beard, dark circles, a face too tired to look surprised at how tired it looked. I went into the last stall, farthest from the door. Closed it, locked it. I didn't take long. Nature's call doesn't wait when you've been downing gas station coffee all day. But something felt off as soon as I stood up. The silence wasn't just thick, it was watchful. You know that feeling when someone stares at you just a second too long on the street? This felt like that. Like the air itself had an eye. I unlocked the stall and stepped out and saw myself not in the mirror. No, I was standing there by the sinks, leaning slightly against the counter, arms folded, my same flannel shirt, my same jeans, same hat with the frayed brim I'd bought at that trucker outlet off I-45 a year back. He looked up and smiled, my exact smile, like he'd practiced it in the mirror for years. Then he nodded like he recognized me, like I was the one who didn't belong. I just froze. He pushed off the counter and strolled past me, his boots clicking sharp against the tile. As he passed, he whispered something. I didn't catch it. 2. Shocked. My mouth was open, maybe stammering something, but no sound came. I turned to follow him out, barely 3 seconds behind, but by the time I hit the parking lot, the bastard was already in my truck. My truck. The engine coughed once, then purred to life. And then he waved at me with my own damn hand, using that same stupid 2-finger salute I give when letting someone merge on the freeway. He grinned with my face, and then he pulled away. I sprinted toward him, yelling, but the tires screamed against. The asphalt and the red brake lights faded into the darkness of the open road. I ran until my lungs burned, but the truck was gone. Just gone. Then I remembered my phone, thought maybe I could call someone. Anyone. I patted my pockets. Gone? Keys? Gone? Wallet? Same. I looked around wildly, trying to make sense of anything. Then I thought maybe someone inside saw something. Maybe it was a prank or some kind of sick joke. I ran back inside the rest stop, passing the sleepy guy behind the counter. He didn't even blink. Did you see that? I yelled. Did you see someone leave in my truck? He looked up, slow and glassy-eyed. You just left, he mumbled. You waved at me and left. I felt my stomach drop. No, that wasn't. Me, I said. That was someone who looked like me. His face went slack. You all right, man? I didn't answer. Just turned and bolted back toward the bathroom. And that's when I saw it. The stall door I'd used was still closed. Still locked. Something in me knew what I'd see before I even touched it. I pushed it open with a shaking hand. There. I was slumped on the toilet. Head tilted, jaw slack, eyes wide and glassy, like I'd had a heart attack or been strangled, or something worse. My skin had a faint bluish tint, like it had been dead longer than a minute or two. And then, the lights flickered, only for a moment, but in that split second, the corpse version of me twitched. Or maybe it just shifted. Or maybe that's just what I told myself afterward to avoid going completely insane. I backed away. Breath caught in my throat. I didn't scream. I couldn't. Every muscle in my body was frozen in the worst kind of fear, the kind that doesn't come with ghosts or monsters, but with looking your own death in the face and realizing it's already wearing your clothes and driving your truck. I stumbled outside, into the dark. The road was empty, no headlights in either direction. No sound but the hum of power lines and a cicada buzz that seemed to swell louder and louder the more I stood there. I started walking. That's all I could do. I walked 5 miles before I found a gas station with a payphone. The sheriff came eventually, took my statement, or tried to. The minute I told him the guy looked just like me, he started glancing at me different, like I was high, or crazy, or both. They found the truck too. Days later, abandoned in a field 30 miles west. No signs of struggle. Everything intact. Except the cab had one weird detail: the driver's seat had dried blood on it. A lot of it. But there was no body. No fingerprints. Not even mine. When I asked them about it, the sheriff just said, "You sure it was your truck?" Like maybe I was just confused. Like maybe I didn't know what my own life looked like anymore. But I know what I saw, and I know what I didn't. I haven't driven a truck since. Can't be around mirrors much either. I always check that my reflection blinks. When I do, that it moves just right. That I'm the one in the body and not the one staring back. Because sometimes, late at night, when I'm walking alone or passing a pane of glass, I see him again, standing just behind, smiling that same damn smile. As if he's waiting for another chance, another mistake, another stop, and I wonder how many of us he's taken. How many are still trapped in restrooms across Texas, their bodies cold, while their faces drive off into the distance, waving, grinning, like they never left at all. He was already 30 hours deep into a solo haul from Phoenix to Corpus Christi, running heavy on discount energy drinks, old radio static, and the kind of desert heat that creeps into your bones and whispers to your nerves. Lonnie Booth was no stranger to long drives, but even he had started to feel it wearing thin, like the inside of his skin was rubbed raw, his eyes sandy and thoughts loose as tumbleweed in a windstorm. When he first saw the rest stop sign, it was just past dusk, a plain green board with reflective white letters. Rest area -2 miles. No name, no services listed, no state seal. But it felt like relief. He coasted in under the purpling sky, blinkers ticking as he pulled his Freightliner alongside the pumps. It looked like a fossil from the 70s concrete island with 2 ancient gas pumps under a sun-bleached awning, one flickering light over the restroom doors. A vending machine leaned against the cinder block wall, humming faintly. There were no other cars, no sound but the distant chirring of crickets and the faint, constant hum of wires somewhere overhead. Lonnie got out stiffly, stretched his spine, until it popped and pumped $30 worth of diesel. He didn't think about the weirdness right away. Not the way the numbers clicked up too slow, or how the pump handle felt just a little too cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer. The wind carried a strange smell, something faintly metallic and sour, but Lonnie just figured it was nearby. Roadkill. He was used to that out here. Used to a lot of things. He made his way to the restroom, which surprised him by being unlocked. Inside, it was clean. That was the first red flag he didn't notice. Not truck stop clean, not janitor just swung by clean. It was scrubbed, pristine. Tiles like polished bone, mirror without a fingerprint, even the air was neutral, no piss. Stink, no bleach, just clean. He washed his hands. Watched himself in the mirror. For a moment, he thought his reflection moved slower than he did, like there was a lag, like a video buffer. But when he shook his head, it snapped back to normal. Just fatigue. Sleep deprivation. The usual. Back outside, the night had thickened. The sky was velvet, full of stars he hadn't seen in years living near the city. He checked his tires, walked around the truck, even cracked a Gatorade. He thought about crashing in the sleeper cab for a couple hours, but something told him to push on. Just another 100 miles or so. He'd slept in worse places, sure, but this stop felt wrong. Too still, like it was watching him. He started the engine, headlights slicing through the dark, and pulled out onto the 2-lane road. It curved southward, and he relaxed into the drive, humming an old Doobie Brothers tune under his breath. 20 minutes passed. The radio fuzzed and cleared again. Then he saw the sign, rest area 2 miles. He frowned. Thought maybe he'd circled back. Maybe he'd taken a wrong turn. Easy enough in the dark on unfamiliar roads. But when the sign passed and the same rest stop came into view, something tensed behind his eyes. That same tilted awning. Same flickering light above the restrooms. Same vending machine buzzing like a lazy fly. His diesel footprint still wet on the concrete. Lonnie didn't stop. He passed it with his jaw clenched, glancing at it through the side mirror. The sign hadn't changed. Still no name, still that same bland promise. He checked his GPS, but it spun like a lost compass, showing a blank gray road. Hell no, he muttered, gripping the wheel harder. He pressed on. Another 40 minutes passed. He counted mile markers, watched the stars shift. The road remained stubbornly empty, no headlights behind him, no road signs besides the same speed limit every few miles. Then again rest area. 2 miles. This time he cursed out loud, slapped the dashboard. He was a rational man, not prone to ghosts or tall tales. But now the sweat on his back felt colder, and the knuckles on his right hand ached with old arthritis he hadn't noticed in years. He passed the rest stop again, and this time the flickering light didn't flicker. It was steady. Watching Lonnie. Drove faster. He tried calling anyone, but his phone showed full bars with no carrier name, no signal, no data. He pulled over, killed the engine, and sat in silence, trying to think. The crickets had stopped. Even the wind felt fake now, like it had been pre-recorded and looped too many times. After another hour, he tried again. Picked a road that curved off west, a rougher route, but still paved. If this was some kind of local highway loop, maybe he could break it. Maybe he'd missed a turn somewhere. He drove until his eyes burned, until the moon slid across the windshield like a ghostly coin. And then again that damn sign. Rest area 2 miles. The diesel gauge hadn't moved. The odometer hadn't changed. His clock still read the same time he left the first time. 9:48 p.m. Lonnie slammed on the brakes. Sat there in the middle of the road, shaking. His breath fogged the inside of the cab, even though the air outside was still Texas hot. He knew now this wasn't normal. This wasn't real. The loop wasn't geographical. Something had him. Backed the truck up, tires kicking gravel, then peeled into the rest stop again. This time, he stomped straight into the restroom. His reflection smiled back before he did. He stared. It stared. Then it blinked. He didn't. He slammed the paper towel dispenser, kicked the door, howled at the ceiling. His own voice sounded muffled, like he was screaming underwater. When he burst back outside, the night was silent again. No wind. No insects. The sky had no stars. Just black. Lonnie tried every road. He even walked, leaving his truck behind and hiking for miles under that black, silent sky. Every path curved. Every fence line doubled back. When he returned to the rest stop on foot, his truck was gone. The pumps were humming again, waiting. Lived there now, somewhere between seconds that didn't tick. He started to think he was dead, but he still felt pain, hunger, thirst, but nothing ever changed. Every vending machine item was dry and hollow. Every drink was warm and flavorless. The mirror didn't show him anymore. It showed the next visitor. Because someone always comes. Sooner or later, a man in a Civic last August. A woman and her daughter in a station wagon 2 weeks ago. They always arrive after dark. Always follow the same loop. And Lonnie watches them from behind the glass. tries to wave, tries to scream. But he can't. The loop won't let him. He just waits. And the rest stop waits too, forever 2 miles ahead, forever clean, forever still, waiting for you. They say it started with an old man in the fall of '96. Some local vagrant who used to panhandle outside the Dollar General in Lindale, up northeast past Tyler. His name might have been Earl or Curtis, depends on who you ask, but everyone remembers the bench. The one behind the rest stop at the edge of the pine break, facing a dry creek bed that only trickled after big storms. It had no plaque, no backrest, just a warped cedar slab nailed between 2 rusted iron legs. Even the highway department couldn't recall installing it. But it was there, just like the stories. And what happened to folks who closed their eyes? There? Well, that's what keeps people talking. They found the old man sitting upright, stiff as firewood, eyes wide and blood dry on his cheeks. A state trooper was first on scene, responding to a call from a woman who claimed she saw a dead man grinning from her rearview mirror. The report said he looked peaceful if you ignored the way his lips were curled back too far, like the skin had shrunk on his skull, and the blood, almost a maroon brown by then, formed little veins from his nostrils down to the dirt, then snaked off the pavement into the woods. That's the part people still whisper about. Not the death, but the direction of that blood. Like it had someplace to go, like it wasn't just leaking. It was following. At first, people thought it was a freak accident. Heat stroke maybe, or drugs. But then came the second body. And the third, always a drifter. Someone alone. Someone who sat a little too long, maybe looking for shade under the pecan trees that loomed heavy above. You'd find them there in the morning, eyes wide, mouths slack, skin cool and dry like leather that forgot to breathe. And that same blood. Just a few streaks, not much. Always trailing off the same direction toward the tree line. Into the dense woods no one liked to hunt. And not even the locals. I saw it once myself at bench. Back in 2012, my cousin Micah had a DUI. Court date in Tyler and begged me to drive him since he'd lost his license. We left Dallas before dawn and stopped at that rest area around 6:30 a.m. to piss and stretch our legs. I wasn't thinking about legends or cursed benches. Just tired from the road and sore from driving his beat-up Ford with a busted suspension. Micah went inside the restroom and I wandered around the back where the grass was dew wet and birds were just starting to make noise. That's when I saw it. The bench had looked old, like it had always been there. Faded gray wood with moss blooming along the edges, like it had never seen daylight. And yet it faced east. Full sun every morning, but it still looked damp. I remember thinking it smelled wrong, too. Not just musty, but metallic, like a radiator hose gone bad. I didn't sit, but I stood near it. That was enough. Close enough to see the faint dark stains in the dirt beneath it. I remember how they trailed off in little rivers that hadn't dried, even though it hadn't rained in over a week. Then I saw something move in the trees, fast. Too fast for a deer, too big for a rabbit. A blur that didn't match the noise it made, which was none. It was just there, then gone. I felt cold all over. Not scared, not yet, just like the heat had drained from my blood. Then Micah shouted from the bathroom and I turned away. He thought I'd wandered off, but I hadn't. I was just standing there, staring at that bench like it owed me an answer. We didn't stop on the way back. I started digging a little after that. Not deep, just asking some locals on Facebook. Groups, reading old obits and local police blotters. There were more deaths than I expected. At least 11 in the last 30 years. All found at that rest area. All sitting up. All eyes open. Every one of them classified under natural causes: cardiac arrest, hypothermia, dehydration. One even said fright-induced aneurysm, which I didn't know was a real thing. But none of them ever had family. No one came to claim the bodies. Just burned in county crematoriums and names etched onto generic urns. And every one of them had that same detail: thin, dark blood trailing away, like something reached into their skulls and took whatever was inside. I might have left it there, filed under weird Texas stuff, but then came the girl from Austin. Her name was Carrie Landrum. She wasn't homeless. She wasn't a drifter. She was a grad student at UT doing a thesis on regional folklore and decided to investigate the bench for a podcast she was launching. That was in May of 2018, her last Instagram post was a photo of that bench captioned, "Let's see if ghosts bleed." Her body was found 3 days later. Same spot, same pose, same eyes. Only this time, the blood trail wasn't just a trickle. It was a stream. They found her recorder too. One of those little handheld ones with the red button. The audio was mostly wind and static, but there's a moment about 20 minutes in where you hear her breathe real fast. Then whisper, "It's not sitting, it's sleeping." Then a scraping sound, then silence, like the tape just ends. Some people say it was cut. Some say she dropped it when she died. But I've listened to it. I found the file online. Someone leaked it from the station. And I swear, right after the silence, if you listen real close, like with noise-canceling headphones cranked up, you hear something wet dragging through leaves. Then whispering, not words, not English. Just breath that moves like speech, like it's crawling out of something too old to speak the way we do. They chained the bench after that. Literally chained it. Big thick ones bolted to concrete blocks. Like it was some kind of feral dog, but people still went. Kids dared each other to touch it. Some claimed it was warm, even in the cold. Others said they heard laughter deep and slow, like someone dragging laughter through tar. A few said they saw things in the trees at night, shaped like people, but too thin, too smooth. Like skin pulled over branches. Then came the man with the dog. 2021. Hiker from Waco. Wasn't looking for the bench, just stopped for a break and let his German shepherd sniff around. The dog didn't come back. He searched for over an hour, then went to the trees. He found the leash tangled around a branch, but no dog, just the collar. And a pool of something dark. No remains. Just that. He slept in his car that night, too afraid to drive. And in the morning, a ranger found him dead in the passenger seat, eyes open, blood on his shirt, and a trail of it. Back to the woods. That was the last time I passed through Lindale. I took the long route ever since, even when it cost me gas. Time, sanity. I don't go near that rest stop. Not because I'm scared of the bench, not anymore. I'm scared of what might have made it. Whatever it is that waits under those trees and opens the eyes of the dead like windows. I think that bench is a lure. I think whatever sleeps in those woods doesn't feed on flesh, it feeds on presence, consciousness. It waits for your mind to slip into dreams. And then it takes the rest. You don't even need to sit on it anymore. You just have to get too close. Close enough to wonder what it would feel like to close your eyes. Just for a second. Just to rest. And by the time you realize it's not rest, it's too late. That's why no one wakes up. Because what's left isn't supposed to.